Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is somebody who constantly makes me question my own life. It's Tom. What's up, buddy?
Hello, friends.
Also joining us this week, he's back. That's right. We can't get rid of him. It's Mr.
No.
Scruby Wells, Tyler Emerson himself. What's up, buddy?
Hi, gentlemen. Thanks for having me again. Doing well.
He of the previous title holder of longest show. You might still be for like longest single guest show, but obviously Slaanesh set a record that will be nigh impossible to beat.
Yeah, there's an asterisk on that one. You can't place it in the same category.
Sure.
I mean, there's always an asterisk on Slaanesh.
That's right. Yes, that was a multi guest episode because it was such a celebration. Let's be honest.
I mean, I wouldn't say celebration, but go ahead.
It was great, and nobody complained, and Slaanesh has been wonderful to this day, or at least it's wonderful as of this day. So however way you want to think about it, that's fine. All right. So at any rate, let's get right into it because we got a lot of big stuff to cover tonight. We're going to talk about the big FAQ. We're going to break down in light of that FAQ. We're going to talk about some design. We're going to get crunchy. We're going to get deep into it. Folks, I hope you're ready to nerd out on a deep discussion of meta and meta and design meta. Oh yeah, we're going to nerd out. So if you want to get into the hardcore crunch of making a game, if you fancy yourself someone with opinions on how this game should be made, well, then this one's for you.
If you know what was that word you?
Lenticular design.
Lenticular design.
Correct.
Then this is a show for you.
That's right. Absolutely. All right. But first we got, no news. But anyway, Tom, what do we got?
Let's talk about the rumor engine.
Sure. Yeah, it's up on the screen right now. And
I liked it.
I don't know, man. I'm excited about this one. It looks like something was photoshopped out of the side of it, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Like that looks like a deck if you turn it sideways, the deck of a ship. And it looks like something was photoshopped off the bottom. Like it looks like an uneven cut off the edge.
No, I think those are barnacles.
I think they are too. Like, I think these little things are barnacles, but I just feel like something was removed out of this image. Like, is there really a hole with nothing in it? These two, little white spots here, is there really nothing underneath those? Because if so, what is it? Is it just a completely wrecked half ship buried in the ground?
Maybe it is a Ideneth endless spell.
Sure. What's your hope, Tom?
Goblin airships.
The Grotbag Scuttlers?
Yes. I mean, it's not, but it's too elven. But yeah. Yeah. My Goblins is my hope.
Gotcha. All right. Tyler, any thoughts on what this thing is?
Yeah, well, it's basically the same thing that Tom thought. Yeah, Grotbag Scuttlers, the long-rumored flying grots, but it doesn't really have that feel to it, at least based on this. I don't know. Hard to say.
Agreed.
It helps if you look at it at an angle.
I guess here's my call. I do think this center area was colored out, because it's there. These two missing boards, and I think I think it is a new terrain piece, not terrain, not for an army. I think it's a terrain piece for terrain. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think we're gonna get a cool new set of terrain that we haven't gotten before. And there's another piece that'll be part of it. That other thing we saw that also had like that.
With the lines. Yeah.
And it'll be like a coastal setting. Like the terrain setting would be like the Forgotten
coastland.
Shoals or the Ghostly Shoals or something like that. And it'll be a bunch of wrecked boats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
wasn't the city Lethis? Wasn't that on a death ocean?
I don't know, maybe. But it'll be like that map that we loved in War. Remember the one where you had to go steal the ship part?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Serpent's Passage.
Serpent's Passage. There you go. Yes.
Bam. Look at that. On the top of my head. 8 years.
Sure. Yeah, so there you go. Wow, 2+ tough. Dropping some lore knowledge on us. In Heish, the Realm Stone is a solid light that can be harvested from the sky. That's amazing. Like, I want more stuff that plays with things like that.
It's
Like,
true.
everything in Heish and Ulgu is awesome. Everything in most of the realms is awesome. Like, some of them are pretty normal. Like, okay, that's fine. Like, Akshi is fire and lava place. I get it. But I like crazy crap like that. It's just like the outer planes in Planescape. Like, some of them are just
I
kind
want
of
more
normal.
of those things. Like,
Yeah.
I want more of that world.
Yep, exactly. You know, sometimes you get a Bitopia that's just kind of boring and where tradespeople go, but sometimes you get a Limbo, and where it's just a swirling chaos where your imagination can make anything become real. You know, you never know what you're going to get. At any rate, yeah, that's my guess. And people are asking if you got a new house. No, this is the same table Tom always sits at. You're just at a 90-degree angle of where he usually sits. Like, he just moved around his table slightly.
So when I work from home, like do research and stuff like that, this is where I sit. Like, it's literally like I can reach over to my painting area, but it's how I reorient my brain to actually doing work rather than doing hobby.
Okay. So there you go. All right. So there's the
work
rumor
tips
engine.
from Tom.
Sure.
Yeah, we have news.
Well,
Godwrek joined Warcry. Yeah. Godwrek joined Warcry.
He joined Warcry. Vince, how about you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. It's pretty awesome. So you can use him in your games of Warcry in a lot of different ways. Like, they have an endurance mission where you can go fight him, and it's not about killing him because that's nearly impossible for a single warband to do. It's about how many rounds you survive. It's like we've all played that in a game before, right? Where it's like you're going to lose. It's just about how many battle rounds you can survive before he kills you. So that's kind of cool. And you can also hire him as a mercenary and stuff like that, but he can't stay. He just like shows up for a game and then leaves, and it's all sorts of fun different ways you can actually use him. You can also do like a big scrum where you get together with other warbands and actually try to kill him. So there's just a bunch of cool stuff for him in there, which is great. And the rules, you can just pull them down right off the site, so everything's just there.
It's exciting.
Yeah, pretty neat. So if you got a Godwrek and you got Warcry,
speaking of a Godwrek, I hear that you can win a Godwrek right now.
You can. That's another new piece of news. I painted up Godwrek. I shared him yesterday. He's in my case, like right over here. And he is going to be Darren Watson, who is running the Godwrek Glorious Godwrek. I'll include a link below. Website where it is hosting results for people who use Godwrek in their 2K tournament armies. At the end of a season, the person with the highest ranking, yeah, exactly, and in first place wins that Godwrek, wins that painted Godwrek. That Godwrek will be going with me to Golden Demon. So I'm not going to say he's going to win anything, but that's what he was painted for.
It could be a Golden Demon winning.
This would be highly unlikely, but it's sure
that is being given away if you run Godwrek in your tournament lists.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Good luck.
Yeah. Now, he isn't venturing to Golden Demon alone, but that's all I'll say of that. It's dangerous to go alone.
Indeed it is. Indeed it is.
Yeah, this is an amazing project with a lot of people involved in it. A lot of people who are sponsoring or providing awards as well, along with the winner getting the incredible model that Vince painted up. Yeah, it's really cool.
It's ridiculous.
Will, I would assume, he said, does anyone know what base size you use Godwrek on in Warcry? I mean, I would assume probably is 32, because that's sort of his gaming base. I think the 40 is really only for display.
Yeah.
I mean, the 40 makes sense if he's been killing warbands, though.
Sure. It's all the dead bodies. Yes. You were about to say something, Tyler, and I know where you were going to go to.
Oh yeah. Well, on the Godwrek, Brendan and I, when Godwrek came out, we had been talking about the idea. I think I might have talked with you guys about it, or maybe multiple people had the same idea around the same time when Godwrek came out, that we need to have basically like a Fellowship of the Ring prize or award at an event.
Yes.
Yeah. So Brendan has actually went ahead and designed that as one of the awards that's going to be available at his event, Bruce City Brawl, next year.
That's
amazing.
Yeah.
For bringing the whole party.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think also what you were going to say is that the KO book and the Disciples of Tzeentch book are out of stock and not going to be replaced.
Yeah.
They are not just temporarily out of stock; they are gone. Yet another
Weird.
in the long line of things we already knew was happening. Like that. Yep, those are sure getting new armies.
All
I
right.
would imagine we'll hear about it pretty early into the new year. Like it's that they're not going to say anything around Christmas because probably no one really would pay attention too much if they haven't already been talking about it. But it might be like right after Christmas they'll talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, what I'd say is this: we had predicted February, but like we know that we have a Sisters release in January. We don't know what else is dropping in January. If that's just a box and some books, I could see that being an early January drop in order to be like a cash grab for Christmas money.
Sure. Well,
I could see like a week 1 or week 2 release of that potentially.
Sure.
If
Good
it's not
retail
February.
sales is also just as much about January as it is about Christmas now because people spend money.
Yep.
As somebody who was in retail for many, many years, I will tell you that January was a huge month.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
So the last 3 years, it's been Git in January, right?
that's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it was Nurgle the year before,
That sounds right.
Yep.
Yep.
And then
and then
Tzeentch.
Tzeentch.
Was the year before that. It's their
And
anniversary.
so those were all, range, essentially sort of revised or updated ranges based on some existing kits. I wonder if, I mean, it would be too hard to speculate that maybe, just maybe, Seraphon might fill that role.
Well, we had speculated that, but I think that was in lieu of any evidence. That had cropped up as a speculation piece, but we've heard nothing of Seraphon.
Yeah.
We've just heard nothing, and so we would have heard something by now. If we had Seraphon dropping in 4 weeks, something would have leaked.
Yeah.
That's my suspicion. That says to me that we don't have Seraphon.
Was Seraphon the actual first book?
It was like, what was it? Was it before
It was.
Stormcast and Corn?
It was the first book.
Okay.
Was it the first standalone book that they did before they had rules in them? They were more or less just storybooks, right?
Yes, they had battalions though. They had He's like that's where the skink, like the shadow, whatever comes from. Like the shadow, the star or something.
Either way, it'd be great if they began with Seraphon and ended with Seraphon, is my point, right? Like, let the Lizardmen bookend the 2+ Stuff says it was the third one. There you go. Okay.
It was the third.
Yeah.
Oh, was it after Stormcast?
Yeah, it's probably after those two.
Stormcast and Corn. Sure. Would make sense that those two were the first since they were probably there supporting the initial stuff. But either way, if it was the first sort of standalone for not supporting a box set, it'd be great to begin and end it that way. Yep.
Yeah.
SCE Bloodbound Seraphon. There you go.
So we've been beating around the proverbial bush here because the FAQ dropped this week.
Wah, 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 wah. That's right, boy. Big FAQ time.
And we had kind of called this last week. Do you remember that? That we said that,
it was that great of a call, but yes, probably we said it would come.
We said that, hey, it sounds like it might have been bumped up, and we could see it as early as next week.
Behold our prognosticative powers. Yeah, let's get into it. This thing is great. I am excited about this. So let's do the high level. Tyler, start us off. Was this a good FAQ? Are you excited about it? Did you like it?
Absolutely. No, I thought this was probably the best update that we've gotten since they have begun doing these FAQ updates, FAQ and errata updates. Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
There are a couple of things that we'll touch upon, but all in all, it shows a very clear sign of continuing this overall positive trend of engaging with the community, listening to the community, and reflecting that in the updates that we're seeing.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's there's not really any changes here that I don't love. Slaanesh.
Hold on, we're gonna wait. We'll get into the specifics in a minute because we're gonna blow by blow it quickly through all of them. So high level, you're saying you're happy.
Yeah.
Okay. High level, I agree. There were 2 misses in this for me. Like this was a 99.5% positive.
Yeah, everybody hear that? I am more positive than Vince is.
Yes, that's because you like the broken thing I don't like. Sorry, bent thing I don't like. It's not broken.
Yes.
I don't know what
Bent.
you're talking about.
Yes. But that's fine. Like, that's in no way, I mean, it's a forest for the trees situation, right? Like, this was an unbelievable victory. Like, I was so thrilled
Yeah.
with every change here. I think this was the best, most positive FAQ we've seen. I think there were 2 mistakes, but we'll talk about those briefly. But overall, this is great. So let's get through these. All right, we ready?
Instantly,
Yep.
the thing that you didn't like, I was so thrilled that I got to be the one to spark that mom and dad fight. Not really fight, but
Sure.
I hadn't experienced one of those this year. I'd gone an entire year without getting one of those in. And
Yes, without
got it
Tom and
here
I
just
going
like-
at each other. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
We are
telling
in
Tom.
we are in a Facebook chat with some other content producers and and Tyler got Vince and I going at each other for 20 minutes.
Oh, it was good
And
stuff.
like 130 some messages back.
It's true.
Vince telling Tom, what did you say to him? That
Oh, don't worry. We're going to do, this is all
That-
just
but
news.
he's
Technically, the
better than
FAQ,
that.
so let me answer this real quick. Somebody said no hobby time. Don't worry. We're going to do hobby time. The FAQ is all happening under news. So there's going to be a long news section, little tiny pick of the week and hobby time, and then meta discussion. This is how we're going to break this up. But don't worry. We'll get to all that. I got plenty of stuff I want to talk about. All right. So we're going to blow by blow this. Ready?
Yep.
Here we go. Nurgle. All the battalions down by 60. Blight Kings and the other Blight King people all, go on unmodified 6s.
hallelujah.
Hallelujah. About time. Could have done it a year
Man.
ago, but better late than never.
They did that, and I'm like, okay, Nurgle's fixed.
Yep, exactly. Like, that's great. It's
Yeah.
great. I think we could still push a few more things. I'd love to see a couple little more.
Yeah.
Like, there's maybe a couple of very, very small tweaks we could make in Nurgle, but I think that's great. Like, fantastic overall.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay.
Yep.
Beasts O Chaos. Dougal down 20 to 100. Bulgor's down 20 to 140. Cygor down 40 to 140. Gorgon down 40 to 160. No other significant rules changes. Yeah, fine. All good stuff. I'm excited, honestly, about 100-point Doom Bowls. I like me a 100-point Doom Bowl. I think he carries his water for 100 points. I think he is a decent hero for 100 points. Bulgor's at 140 are at least mildly interesting over Enlightened, who should probably kind of go drift up just maybe slightly, and maybe Skyfire should kind of slightly drift back down a little. Well, that's fine. Whatever. That's a different discussion. But like, and even Gorgon's at 160 is like interesting.
I think
That's an
that's great.
interesting bully at 160.
Yeah, I played 2 over the weekend, and they're scary, man.
Especially if they're in the God marked battalions, right? Like
Yeah.
a Khorne Gorgon is pretty good.
Yeah.
Worth
Like that guy does
160.
some work.
He is worth 160.
He is worth 160. Yes, like you're gonna get 160 points of punch out of a Khorne Gorgon. Yeah. So in the brass, whatever that thing is, I can't remember the name.
Brass the spoilers.
Thank you, brass to spoilers. Yeah. So good stuff. I'm just, by the way, as far as order goes, folks, I'm doing these in the random order I have them written down. So this isn't like alphabetical or anything. Deepkin. The both of the aspects went down 40 points, so 380 for the sea, which is the caster, and 360 for the storm, which is the melee.
Are we down to 300 points yet with them?
No.
Okay, never mind.
Yes, as Haywo wonderfully
Haywo.
memed, I can go lower. Yes, the Leviathan down to 310 because we just can't get that 300 number, and the Sharks down for 20 points from 120 to 100. No other real
100!
significant rules changes.
Sharks at 100.
Yeah, man, Sharks got pretty interesting. Real quick, other thoughts on Beasts? Yes, I think there's still a couple other things in Beasts that could have points moves down. Okay, there we go. Yes. But this was good. These were all positive moves. At any rate, yeah, Sharks at 100 is amazing. The Leviathan at 310, you might see it here or there. I still don't think it's good enough to make a super hard list, but I think it's actually like interesting enough to take in some more fun 3-2-y type of lists now for sure.
Yeah.
And
the list that most people should be playing. Yeah.
sure.
I don't have a problem with it.
And I have a feeling we'll see people experiment with aspects to see if they're actually worth it yet. My suspicion is they need to drop 20 to 40 more before they actually carry their full water.
Which would point them at how much?
Like 320 to 340, somewhere in that area. Yeah, sure. Like they just don't feel like they're on quite that level. I mean, they're closer now. They're closer.
Aspect
I
to
think
see
3
2 cast 2 unbind.
Yeah, he is a 2-caster. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that a solid 3 to 320 would make them imminently playable. That's what I'll say.
Sure. I don't think there's any question about that. But I mean, like, it's tough. It's tough with them. They're a really interesting, odd piece, right? Because they're like relatively large models. I just mean like they're on like a 100 mil base or whatever. That's not huge, but it's fine. They're
on a keeper base.
They're on a keeper base. That's right. They're they're wounded like a monster, but they have no chart that gets worse, right? Which has value to it. Like that has value.
Yep.
Right?
They are not a monster, so they can hide in terrain.
Yeah, I mean they have interesting things that
they get lookout, sir.
They can't hide in terrain, can they? They have I don't think whatever. There's something different
it's
about
war
that.
machines. It's war machines over 7 wounds.
Right.
Is what you're thinking about, not heroes. It's monsters and war machines over 7 wounds.
There you go.
But yes, they can absolutely hide in terrain.
There you go. Yeah, I knew they could look out, sir. But yeah, they're just like they're really in a weird place as like just kind of this big hero not monster thing, right?
Sure.
Like they don't have the output of like they don't have the output of something often around that points cost, but I'm not sure they don't have the utility. It's very hard for it to point utility heavy pieces, I think is what you see throughout the game, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Instantly, Tom, when you say hiding in terrain, you don't mean they fly. Do you mean something different?
I think it just means their ability to take cover.
Take cover.
By hiding in terrain, I mean I'm going to stick them in cover, and they're going to go down to a 3-up save.
Yeah.
Or a 2-up if they're base 3-up. I haven't looked at them.
Yeah, the base 3-up. Yeah.
Okay, so go to a 2-up save by standing on a rock.
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested in.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so Sylvaneth, who cares about these people?
No.
Alariel back down to 600 where she should have stayed forever. I don't know why she suddenly jumped up 60 a long time ago.
Yeah.
Spirited Earth down 40 points. Sure, to 300. Tree Lord Ancient down 40 points to 260, which is actually, I think, probably the right number for him.
Mm-hmm. He either needed to go to 2 cast, 2 unbind, get an upward update or drop 40.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the Tree Lord down 20 points to 180. No real significant rules changes.
Yeah.
I mean, good stuff. I'm honestly way more excited about these as part of Living City in Cities of Sigmar than I am for them. Like, Sylvaneth as an army, I'm ready to just write it off. Personal perspective, I don't like it. I like it's I hate their forests. I hate the way it plays on the table. It's it's got to be in the running for my least favorite armies to play against.
Vince is like hard pass.
Yeah.
Well, it's unfortunate because I do think that the army still maintains it's enjoyable to play outside of those woods. Yeah, the play style, it's very interesting to play against Sylvaneth, I think.
Can be sometimes outside of the woods.
Outside of the woods, which I know can be difficult to separate those two.
It is very hard, seeing as how that's basically most of the strat.
It's kind of their shtick. Yeah. Like that's what they do.
Yeah. We might see more triple or quad Durthu list.
Sure.
Run some cheap outcast battalions, give some artifacts, run them in two pairs, 2x2. And take advantage of the stomps, turn the stomps into 75% chance of making the enemy always strike last. Yeah, I didn't have the guts to ask for a 40-point drop on Durthu's in the latest round of feedback, so I was kind of surprised by that.
I mean, I think it's these were all points that needed to go down, right?
Yeah.
Like all of these things were too expensive for what they were.
Yeah.
Okay. So start there. These were all good changes. These were the right changes, right? I look at all these and go, "Yep, correct. You've made the correct choices." That doesn't mean like I don't think we should look at the FAQ like it needs to solve all problems with an army simultaneously.
Sure.
If that's your expectation, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. Every one of these should be about moving in a positive direction. You can't just like there are so many variables flipping around here that it's really hard to just like go and nailed it. I flipped 40 switches and now the army's perfect. Like that can't
like you want to do one lever at a like a handful of levers at a time. If there's 40, you want to do 4 or 5 maybe. And you're like slowly moving the needle, and that the hope is that you're moving towards it.
Right. And I think what we've seen over the last couple iterations is mostly positive movement, right? Like for the most part, it's all been going in the right direction, and this is more of that. So like,
Right.
do Sylvaneth probably need some more touches? Now we're just staring at Tyler's chest. There you go.
Sorry.
All
Hey,
right.
man.
So you've been working out. Yes, I mean the answer is yeah. I think they still need another touch. I honestly would love to see them like, you know what? Third time's a charm. Let's try it again with that book. That's what I say.
You want
Let's
to republish the book?
republish the book. Pull that one. Let's just do it again, and
You
let's
just
go to
set down
the
one set of trees. Anytime you would summon trees, just make that turn a
existing terrain
terrain
overgrown.
piece
I've
into an overgrown, and it becomes a forest functionally.
talked about it 100 times. It's the right answer.
Yeah.
And even in Slaves to Darkness, they started playing with literally like you changing the nature of terrain on the board,
Yep.
right? And adding
We
other
did. They
features
did.
to it.
I love it.
Like they thought of it like 3 books too late or 5 books too late or whatever, you know? Like again, the answer was easy.
Well, again, I'm still a big fan of that latest book. Yeah, clearly it has an obvious issue that was maintained, but from the standpoint of viable variety, I think it did a really nice job there with Null Roots, Winterleaf, Heartwood, Dreadwood was
Yep.
my favorite. You know, we talked about Dreadwood. I thought that was going to be the most competitive. The commandability is one of the best things in that book, and Lori's
I
been
still
knocking
think
out
it
of the park.
is.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, but
No.
we can move on.
Absolutely.
Good for
All
that.
right. The point is good direction. I'm excited about it. The only reason I didn't get rid of my Sylvaneth because I was excited now because they have a purpose again because I can use them in my city's armies. So yay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Daughters of Cain, Avatar of Cain down 40 points to 140. Who cares? And Bloodstalkers down from 140 to 120. Who cares? No other significant changes.
Keep going.
Yeah, I mean,
So
both of those things are just like, they're not going to be useful. I don't really care what they're pointed at. They're just never going to have a... They are scrolls that will not have a purpose in that army in their current version.
So here's the deal. I'm not going to pay 140 for a terrain piece until turn 3.
Sure.
Even if I get to make a prayer to move it around. And I'm not going to pay 120 points for 5 shooting attacks that do 1 damage.
Right.
It's not. I don't care that they're on 2 wound models. Like, it's like at 100, I might be willing to run them in the battalion in min unit sizes.
Mhm.
But they're just like, you want to do something with them? Here's what you do with them. You move them up to, instead of 1 attack a model, you do 2 attacks a model, and you make their snipey mortal wounds on 6s only trigger if they did not move. There you go.
Mm.
Sure.
It's interesting.
And
yeah.
now they're worth 140.
Yeah.
Works for me.
Doc might be one that we'll touch upon later. Yeah, there's Vince. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. Yeah, I reached out to a few Doc players over the last couple of days here just to get feedback on the changes, and yeah, it was essentially Tom's view that he just expressed. It doesn't really change things.
Right.
No, because here's the deal.
Doc
I'm
has
gonna pay-
fundamental flaws. Despite Doc's current thing, there are like huge... Doc is a big gilded house on top of like a rotten foundation. That's the best way I can describe it.
If I want 5 shooting attacks, I'm taking Harpies.
So...
With the same effective range of movement and shooting.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll talk Doc a little later.
Yep.
Legions, LON, Neferata down 20, Manfred down 20. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's still that issue that let's see, Arcan and Nagash.
Yes, are still
their-
worse in Legions than they are in OBR.
Yeah, with their spellcasting limitations.
Right.
Not by a little bit.
I didn't quite get that one unless I'm missing something. Why that didn't get changed?
I wonder if I don't know. Maybe it was because of they didn't touch OBR at all in the big FAQ here. So it probably just suffered from that, right? Like, again, I guess that's technically a Legions thing, but it probably falls more under like them looking at with OBR, and they're probably thinking of like, what do they even want to do to that
With Legions. Right. I don't think that we'll see... I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it. Like, I could see them redoing the Legion's book sooner rather than later, and reimagining that force in a sequence of books.
Sure. Like, it doesn't probably need to be one giant force, honestly. Like, you could, it can or it can't. Like, there's too much crap in there as it is. I've always hated that death is all just reporting up to one guy. I mean, I guess if any army is going to be, or if any alliance is going to be the ultimate dictatorship,
Death.
It is death, but still. All right, let's see. Skaven. This is one of my 2 misses. I'll talk about it in a minute. Plague Monk's got a new war scroll. It's better. It's correct. It's the right war scroll. I like it. I love it. They killed all the dumb complexity. It's still perfectly scary and fine for 280. If you don't think so, you're suffering from anchor pricing because the old one was so broken sideways that you're used to getting like outrageous amounts. Like this is just you were way under market norms there for what you were getting. Now that you have to pay market normative prices, you're like, this is a ripoff. No, it's just what everybody pays.
Yeah,
right.
your prescription is 6 months of Liberators at 100 and Judicators at 160.
That's right. Yeah.
and come back to me.
And talk to us then. Reset those anchors.
What I'll say is this: if you want a discussion of this, go to my my Twitter feed.
Yes.
And I laid all the numbers beside each other's, and like functionally, like the monks are priced almost identically to witch elves. Like, attack profile for max block size are 20 points cheaper, functionally same defenses, and they actually have more abilities than the witches do for what they're getting in the same attack profile. But nobody would say that they're like that witches are bad.
I mean, I would say witches are annoying, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
No, they're not bad.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Right. But everybody now is saying that like monks are terrible or they're bad or whatever.
No, again, that's just anchor pricing. Like, it's all it is. It is when you've set your anchor, and this is one of the problems that they have right now. Like, everybody wants these big sweeping changes, but the problem is that like they have to be careful of how much they move stuff around, because if they take something that's real broken and just bring it all the way back to wholly fixed, people lose their minds, right? Because everybody's already anchored to the like, this thing, I was getting this level of value and now I get less. Even if that's now the correct point, even if they bring it down to the theoretical benchmark or accurate thing, it still feels like a loss, and people register losses harder, right?
Yep.
So, like, I get it, but to me, Plague Monks are like, yep, okay, that's now a valid unit, glass cannon hammer, and should perform about like it should at its points.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
We had a few other things with Skaven.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sure. Sorry, that was the big one. Bombardier, it went up 20, which is correct because he was the better version. It was always silly. They were the same price. Screaming Bell went up 20 to 240. Okay, sure. Seems about right. Deceiver went up 20. That felt unnecessary. My poor Eshin Deceiver. That's fine. Like, whatever.
Pick an Eshin.
Just come out with a new Eshin book and all new rat sculpts, and I'll forgive you. The Warp Seer went up to 320, which is the correct amount. Back when we did the show, where we reviewed Skaven, I said his original number, which was like 260. I said, this is nonsense. This guy's 320 at least. At least. It took 9 months, but we got there. Like, that was absolutely the right number from the jump. Okay? And he might still be 20 points too cheap, but still. And then Stormfiend max unit size was decreased from 9 to 6. Okay.
Good. Yeah. Good change.
So where's the miss?
Here's the miss. They didn't move any Skaven points down. Like, I know it's fun to hate on Skaven, okay, because they have all this undercosted crap. And look, I support every one of these up changes. Every one of them. I think they were all correct. Okay. Like, they're all right. That is all correct. But there are things in Skaven that are just overcosted that are never going to get played, and it's a shame because they're not super great. But it like Rat Ogres need to come down a little bit. Those guys could be really fun and could have a potential role, right? But they have like the elite problem. They're elite with low defenses that don't kick out quite enough damage. Move them down 20 points, maybe we'll talk, right? Or something like that. You know, like there are things like that in that army that need to be adjusted down. Storm Vermin, thank you very much. Autumn Lotus, or sorry, Alex said it. Is another one. Like, Storm Vermin need to come way the hell down. Those guys are just, like, unbelievably overcosted right now. Most Molder stuff is up too high. Like the Hell Pit Abomination, everybody was all freaking, and it went up 20 points, and that's the most ridiculous thing ever. Like, it's decent. Okay. Decent isn't a 240-point non-hero monster with a 5-up save. Get out of here.
I haven't seen that thing in lists since the what spring FAQ, whatever the last FAQ was prior to this one.
Yeah.
I never see it
Because it's not good, and it dies super easy. And it can come back sometimes, like 33% of the time with some number of wounds. But like it's not a fire phoenix. You know what I mean? Like, get out of here. If that Hell Pit Abomination had like a hero rat on the back, and was like, and doing crazy stuff, I'd be like, all right, well, fine, then we can move it up.
Yeah.
But, like the problem with this kind of thing is when an army is seen as overpowered, people will often miss the weak stuff in it. People focus in on the broken elements. Right.
Yeah, we talked about this with Doc today in the chat. Is that like people focus on Doc, but if like you just remove the Hagnar witch block stuff, like they have non-functional pieces of their army that like people just never see.
Right. Yeah, you're not
really
solving any root issues by doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, like there are just many units in Skaven. I mean, Skaven is like one of those factions that has more units than anybody else. So of course there are always going to be bad units. Super fine. I'm okay with that, right? Like I'm not asking for 48 or whatever they have playable, perfectly balanced war scrolls. That's insanity. That's never going to be the case. But there's still positive stuff we can do, right?
Yeah. I would agree with that.
Okay. All right. Moving right along. Stormcast. I am excited about this one for reasons that have nothing to do with Stormcast. The Drakesworn Templar.
I wonder why.
Down from 460 to 420. The Lord Celestin on Stardrake down from what, 560 to 500 even?
Why, hello.
Hello. And the Evocators on Dracolines down from 300 to 260. Great changes all around. I think the Stardrake has been underrated for a while. Ever since he actually
Matt kicked your ass, but that's
ever since he took me behind the woodshed and showed me that
Slaanesh.
that Skaven, like Slaanesh, just doesn't have the power to kill that unit. Like it's just not in the cards. And that single model can kill the entire army, and anything I'll summon, I can keep summoning all day. It's fine.
Did I tell you guys about the Stormwing trait?
Yeah.
By the way, he was doing that.
Oh, okay. I didn't know. I'm like, that's got to be just something that I haven't heard discussed. Because I can't be the only one to discover.
Yeah, of course he was doing it. Like he would mortal wound me on the move, and then on the charge, and then on the pylon, and like my units were just dying.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, Stormwing. This will last probably 6 months until the FAQs get.
Right now, it triggers on all the moves.
Yeah, it just says on whenever you move. If you move over an enemy, do a D3 mortal wounds, and so like. You can do it on charge. You can. Hey, we're gonna share all 5,000 of our 20, our views or whatever. However many views this video gets, everybody's gonna know about it. The Star Drake, on any move does a D3 mortals if he passes over an enemy base, and so you can do it on move, on charge, and on pylon.
Right. He would just come over like a tiny touch of like 0.1 inch. He would just clip and then land and clip and then land and clip and then land. And it meant that like my chaff walls just collapsed.
Templars, like, can they duplicate mount traits?
No, I don't think so.
I thought Stormcast could still duplicate mount traits.
Oh, I'll bet they can. I'm gonna look at that because that means you could have 4. Like
Alex says with Drake Temple, you can put it on 2 Drakes since it's not unique.
Oh yeah.
Oh right. You get an extra one per battalion, right? An extra mount trait.
Yeah, you could. That'd be amazing.
Yeah. By the way, the drop of this to like 420 made me want to get out that battalion. The drop of the Drakesworn Templar to 420.
I thought you dropped to 400.
No, he's 420.
Oh no,
420. It's 500 and 420 now.
Yep.
First of all, obviously don't need to say it, but let's just go ahead and say it. Fantastic change for Cities of Sigmar. Like yet again another win for the free folk. Like I immediately said, how am I going to make a dragon conversion for my Whirlwind's Edge army? Because I absolutely want to take one of these bad boys in Tempest and one of these bad boys in Living City, where they both, in both of those, it seems very appealing. I love the yes indeed 420 all day long. I love that Templar in Living City because he can shoot and fade.
Yep.
I love either of them, frankly, in Tempest where they can shoot across the board and be on like a 2+.
Yeah.
But I want to take that. What I really want is a Stormcast book that redoes that 3 Stardrake battalion and makes the ability not utter garbage, right?
Yeah.
But I don't care, even if it doesn't. Okay, even if I would play it right now. I've got a bunch of extra dragons in there that I was trying to figure out how to up armor and if they're big enough to be Star Drakes.
Nice.
Like, just I've got dragons from like Reaper and stuff, and I was like, oh, simplest army ever.
Yeah.
3 of those bad boys out. I just got to figure out 3 battle line, and I am jobs a good. And there you go.
Like 15 Liberators and done.
Exactly. Look, I still got painted Liberators. It's cool. No problem. So at any rate, the
Well, there were some
Indeed.
other things with Stormcast. So the main errata
yes,
was the long strikes. So for the hero phase shooting, there's been a long-standing debate about whether they get to shoot at 30 inches in the hero phase, and they said no. Sorry, you don't get to have fun.
Well, and likewise, like the Hurricane crossbows. don't have
Hurricanes.
shots. Yeah.
Hurricane's only going to be 6 shots, not 9 shots in the hero phase. It's not the end of the world. It's definitely good. I think you'll feel
It's
it.
fine.
But,
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's
Look,
fine.
Sigmar's going to pop a new chamber in 2020, and
Right.
everything will be fine.
Crack in your chamber.
Yeah, that's probably why there's a lack of widespread changes or more
Yep.
changes than these 3 war scrolls. Yeah, there's probably a book that's on the way relatively soon.
Yeah, and yes, Meth is correct. This is me at my most Timmy. You tell me I can have a 3 dragon army. I mean, look, hashtag 3 mag meta was started on this show. Okay, that's all I'm saying. So you tell me 3 Star Drakes, and that's playable now. I'm in like
Yeah.
Flynn. Okay, like that sounds so fun and amazing. Like I love that.
Yeah. That is Vince at his height. That
Yes,
is
because I want to push dragons forward, going rawr, like that's yes.
they are Vince's monster trucks.
You betcha. Those are monster trucks I can get behind. Okay.
Last thing on Stormcast, I think they're the 2019 version of Iron Jaws in 2018, where they're actually better than people think they are.
Yeah, there's some hidden like solid lists in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
There's been a lot of obsession about the 43.5% win rates and LOV stats, which I get it. It's been going down quite a bit over the last 18 months, but they can be a lot better than that win rate suggests.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
I played them a ton this year.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was like my personal win rate with Iron Jaws in that year you're talking about was over 80%. So you know,
Right.
it's fine at tournaments. So whatever. At any rate. Corn. Mighty Skull Crushers down from 180 to 160, and Blood Crushers down from 140 to 120, both down 20 points. Yep.
Okay.
Both real good. Minor changes, but made them both very interesting. Skull Crushers more than Blood Crushers. Blood Crushers always are problematic for a host of reasons, but they're even at 120. I'm like, okay, we've hit that like magical 1 wound to 10 point ratio, so like I can live with it as an interesting just chaff element, or slightly heavy chaff element. But Skull Crushers at 160, you have my attention.
Right.
That is like
That's a good cap for 160.
Yeah, that's a solid pick. I'm in on that. I like those. No other significant corn changes. But yeah, good changes there. I dig it.
Yep.
Yeah, Autumn Lotus says I'm bringing 18 Blood Crushers. I mean, yeah, that's like you really can get outrageous numbers of those guys now. Even at 120, it makes a big difference, right?
Sure.
Times 6 units, like that's a heck of a lot of points you saved. That's buy 6 units to get 1 free right there on the points changes. All right, Fire Slayers. Miss number 2 is contained here. Volkite Berserkers down from 160 to 140. That's fine. And
No-
Earth and what's that?
Nothing to see here.
Sure. I mean, I thought they were fine at 160, but I think they're fine at 140. So that's cool. Um, I'm not gonna fight that change. It's cool. Hearthguard Berserkers max unit size decreased to 20. If they had stopped there, I would be like, positive change. Yes, good stuff. A plus. I like where we're going.
But I thought you said you wanted to like sprinkle in some positive with the negative, and so they did. They said,
They-
you know what? We are going to cap it at 20, but we don't want to just leave it there.
No, and in fact, they now gained a horde discount at 20 of 120 400, meaning instead of paying 480 for 20, which is what you would have paid previously, you're now paying 400 for 20, an effective savings of 80 points.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
the
the
list needed
reality
it.
is the weak way to play them was always the giant Death Star, because this game isn't about shoving a single Death Star down your enemy's face in most matchups, right?
Right.
It's just not.
You need diffusion of power.
You need multiple centers of power. So 220s was always the stronger choice. The problem was you were overpaying because the horde discount existed up at 30. And it actually was, quite unfavorable to do that. Now, however, good. Zerkers everywhere. Like, one of the worst units to play against in the game. Like, one of the least fun units to play against, because they can very, very easily be highly defensive and highly offensive at the same time. We can argue about exactly how they need to be babysat, how many different heroes they need to have. Like they've got to have like a battlesmith, and there's a prayer that can trigger. Do they need to go all the way to 2-up, re-rolling ones, which is a thing they can achieve, and a 4-up against wounds and mortal wounds, and they can certainly kick out like an outrageous amount of pain that'll chop down anything that hits them. They were already the gold standard of one of the hardest units in the game, and you can get 2 of them still quite hard. Like, can they both be ultra buffed? Probably not. Can they both be super tough? You betcha. Can 3 of them still be super tough? Yep. And lists like that can exist. I do agree with Tom, who has posted some sample lists, and I agree with him that like actually the most powerful list probably isn't like
All.
3. Yeah, like all in on Zerkers, like 320s. I think 220s or something in that nature is probably the right area.
220s, it's what you need. And then you get to have all the rest of your toys.
Right. Then you actually have enough of the other toy support pieces, mobility.
Yeah.
Can you fit a Magmadroth, like Runefather, in there?
Actually, yeah. The list that I'm playing with right now, the one that... So I came up with the list, Vince, that you had seen that was a 3-drop. I was 20 points over on that list. So that actually was bad napkin math. And so that's not actually viable. Which forced me to like go back to the drawing board, go back to 1 battalion instead of 2. And I'm the list that I'm looking at right now for my Fire Slayers has a mag smiter in it. So rather than the Lord, the hero, because like you don't want your general on a Magmadroth because they'll get sniped off. Like you'd rather, like they're actually more survivable when they're on foot.
Yeah,
like, that sounds really counterintuitive, but they are. They're more survivable on foot because of the Oryx, because of the firewall, because you can hide them easier, because of Lookout Sir, because of all those things.
yeah.
It's better to have them on foot. So I don't want my general on foot or on a mag, but you can fit a mag in. And like my what I consider like a hyper competitive list is actually running a Magmadroth now, which I wasn't previously. So
Yeah, I mean, like I consider this a miss. These guys should they just shouldn't have a horde discount. Like, they just published a whole Slaves to Darkness book that is absent horde discounts. These guys don't need a horde discount. That's the position I'm going to take. Is it, like, break the world? No. Are they bent? Yes. Are they, like but there's plenty of other bent units in the game, okay? And so, like, this isn't me saying that this is, like, this is the last hill, or this is the end of the game.
New Slaanesh.
No.
This is not new
Nope,
Slaanesh.
definitely not. No,
Right.
no. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this was a bad change that didn't need to happen. Like, it didn't need to be there. They were fine.
Yeah, I know it's everyone's favorite pastime is to make comparisons, particularly cross-faction comparisons, and there can be challenges with that. But good lord, you can go to town with cross-faction comparisons.
I think I posted 8 during the argument we were having, which was about this.
Yeah.
And there is no other, like, Here is my blanket statement.
Yeah.
You ready? There is no other 400 point-ish unit, give or take 50, 60 points, in the game that delivers this amount of value.
Yeah.
That's the argument.
Yeah, hard pressed to think of counters, but anyway, my favorite from today, my friend Sam
certainly
sent me.
20 Chaos Warriors ain't matching up to this.
Well, that was it was Sam. Yeah, Sam. I was about to say that Sam sent me 20 Chaos Warriors at 400.
Right. like 20 Chaos Warriors at 400, and it's actually a good comparison because they too often will want a babysitter with about the same aura reach, often, right, of like this 12-inch Holy Within bubble, and they'll often, and they also have a lot of synergistic bonuses, and they're on the same basis of 32 mils, and like, you know, there's a lot of similarities there, but there's just no comparison. That fight happens, Hearthguard walk away, Chaos Warriors do not. Okay. And like, again, both of those need, like, and people are saying like, in the chat, people are like, they need support to function. Yep, support you were going to take anyways. You were going to take a Battlesmith. Everything in the game needs support to function. Well, almost zero units function completely independently. The game is about power pairs and synergy. That's every army.
Yeah.
Sean Clark is suggesting that 30 Mortek Guard sit in the similar space to, which is the same price as 20 Hearthguard Berserkers.
Yeah, because 30 is 30 exactly 400?
It's 390.
There you go. I accept that. I accept Mortek Guard are tied.
Well, the other issue...
But again, they're synergistic as well, right? Because they want other support pieces around to really turn them on. Now, they have a slight advantage in that interdependence piece, and that their champion can also do some of the work.
Be a hero, right.
Yeah. But they do want support to be, like, you know, whatever. Again, I'm making a bigger deal. Thank you, Sean, 390. They do, like, I don't want to... Again, I know I'm making a big deal of this, and it's not really a big deal. It's just, like, it is a unit I hate fighting. I find it generally annoying. I think, and it's emblematic of a unit that shouldn't exist, that, by the way, Mortek Guard also are. Which is a unit that can simultaneously be highly defensive and highly offensive.
Right.
It's functionally your Witch Elf like your Hagnar Witch Elf problem again.
Correct.
But with more survivable heroes, more survivable support heroes.
And less mobility. Sure.
Totally fair.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
But like I would just haphazardly clump all three of those together.
As Mr. Ruffisto said, just bring more Rend.
Just bring more Rend and get good. Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. Or just stop playing people who play Fire Slayers, and if they show up in a tournament, I just go and I'll bring like a king, like a chess piece, and when they show up, I'll just set it on the table and then tip it over and walk away and say nothing.
There you go.
Hey Vince,
I'll play them. I play Fire Slayers frequently. It's actually it's fine. It's a fun game.
Hey Vince.
Yeah.
I can't wait to roll some dice with you this weekend.
Yeah, man, we're gonna be playing this weekend. I'm sure you'll bring your Fire Slayers, and that's fine.
I may have 40 Hearthguard Berserkers built over there and mostly painted.
Bring them along. I'll help me sharpen the knife on how much I hate them. At any rate, let's move on.
So our local guy Ryan, who plays Fire, he's starting up a Fire Slayer. He had to explain the firewall to me very slowly. That it seemed quite janky, and we didn't see any changes to it.
What don't you need? Yeah,
I mean,
like
perfectly fine.
No,
yes,
I mean in April. In April, I said that it needs to be fixed. I highlighted it. I made a big deal out of it. It never got fixed, and so I said, "Fine, I'm going to play with it." And which is basically, for those of you guys who don't know, the Fire Slayer wall says this: if line of sight is traced to a unit, or a model within that whose the center of their base is within a half inch of this wall, or within an inch of this wall.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Within an inch of this wall, then
you can't draw line of sight to them.
You can't draw line of sight, which means that you can literally, you can stand in front of the wall and be protected from line of sight. You can be base to base with these models and be out of line of sight.
Correct.
Yeah, seem pretty janky as hell.
Right. And it also grants a 12-inch bubble, a Mystic Shield.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, that's often where your rerolling ones is going to come from. Often, but not always. It could also just be the command ability, but often, yes.
or burning your forge.
Sure.
Can
Yep.
do it.
Yep. Yep. Let me say it this way: it's also going to be where your rerolling ones comes from if you're playing Tom, since Tom loves that stupid wall and uses it all the time.
It's 40 points.
Sure.
Like I'm not gonna lie. Like I put in like 2 units and then the wall, and then the rest of my list gets built.
I get it.
Yeah.
All right, Flesh Eater Courts, Crypt Horrors went from 150 to 130. Cool. They were fine.
Yeah.
No issues. Good change. Thumbs up. Gloom Spike Gits. I like this change. You notice I like all the ones a lot where they just make monsters cheaper. We're gonna talk about that later. A Ragnarok with Flinger down 30 to 220. A Ragnarok with the War Party down 30 to 200. And Skitterstrand down 40 to 200. Aces. Dig all of that. All them big spiders getting cheaper.
So
they're
you
probably
know
all
what I'm
still
not gonna
bad,
do?
but they're cool.
I'm saying, you know what I'm not gonna do? Still not gonna play any of them. Not a single one.
This just makes my pie to the face armies that I talked about in the Gits review all the more viable, which is like 3 skitter strands in the battalion. That's like a straight what? That battalion's 100 points, right?
Here's the deal.
700 points.
You're not gonna get me to run that spiders army because it's rotten. Because the base unit, the Spider Riders are terrible.
Sure.
Like it's like that's the problem with that army.
I hear you. No, I just want to use that one battalion. I could build the other 1,300 points can be whatever. I'm just saying 3 skitter strands, that battalion. I unburrow them and charge, and just block up the whole board with those giant 160 mil pie plates.
Yeah. Still not going to do anything, and they're still going to murder through your spiders.
I'm sure that's true.
So when do we want to talk about the sequencing issue?
In just a moment. We're going to end on it.
Okay.
We have one more point thing to go through. Night Haunt, Lady O down 20, Kurdos down 20, Black Coach down 40 to 220. I know you're excited about that, Tom, because the coach performed pretty well for you. It's actually like I was really impressed with the Black Coach constantly.
Yeah, I mean, what I'll say is this: like, it has all of the problems. Like, it's actually a really interesting problem that it creates, because it's that army has no objective holding heroes. Like, it has no heroes that have more than 7 wounds or 8 wounds that hold
that are in any way sort of tough. Yes.
Right. Like, there's just nothing in the army that can take any heat.
It's a lot of ethereal 4-up dudes with no aftersave.
Right, and so like when you give items to foot heroes because there's no one else to carry items. And so the problem is that like the coach should probably be a hero. It has a Cairn Wraith, which is a foot hero, on the coach.
Yeah.
The right answer here is just the Steam Tank Commander.
Right.
Yeah.
Black Coach 220, Black Coach with
Cairn
whatever Cairn Wraith driver, 260.
Yeah, or 300. I mean,
whatever.
300 might still be high, but you get what I'm saying.
Something.
My critique is that like it should have had the hero keyword, and so I had provided some feedback right after Havoc when I took it to Havoc, and my feedback was this: either it needs to gain the hero keyword, or it needs to lose more points because it can't do what it needs to do. And it lost more points. So at 220, I mean, I was a buyer. I was a reluctant buyer at 260. At 220, I don't think I'm wasting those points at all.
No, I will say it always did good work for us, like in the teams game. Like when you and I were a team, it was always because it's so much faster than people anticipate.
Yeah.
And you would just shoot it across the board and pin things, and people would just not. And like against lower defense stuff, it will do pretty significant damage.
Right.
Especially when buffed by all the stuff you were kind of buffing it with.
Yeah, I mean, it has like if I want to run it, which I can do pretty easily. Like it has run and charge on like the second upgrade. And so like doing a 23-inch base movement is not hard on that thing.
Right.
Because like the item that you take is the +3 movement in the movement phase banner. And so like you can shoot, easily 23 and then it charges on top of that. So I mean it can move, it can shoot across the table, and it can retreat and charge as well when it levels up. And so like it can be where you need it to be. Like I said, I was telling people in the Night Haunt army, like they were really skeptical of it right after I took it. And one of the things I said is that I consider it a necessary piece in that army in Nighthaunt. It does things that no other piece in that army can do.
Right.
And on top of that, it's model. It's like restoration aura that it does that everybody like doesn't think much of. It's models, D3 models, not D3,
which was paying big dividends with your Hex Wraiths.
Right, because between that and the general aura, that's also a D3 models. I'm returning 2 D3 models to Hex Wraith units.
Right.
And so like that's all that's on 4-up invulnerable saves. So that's not 2 wound models. It's not too shabby.
Yeah. So I agree. All in all, I thought these points changes were great. Like I was really excited about all these. A lot of these are armies that I play or have, and I was like, oh man, this makes me want to put some stuff on the table. I got out my BOC and like reorganized everything to make sure all my Gorgons were in line and stuff. A couple of those guys need to be rebased. They're not on squares. They're on the wrong rounds. This is what I was telling Tyler before the show. Because like armies that I put together back in 2016, of which BOC is largely one, because I built it at the same time I built my Tzeentch Slaves to Darkness army in like in the early part of AOS 1, like basically pre-points is the first when I started building that. And I agree with Strength Hammer, by the way. Kraith is in fact the hard counter to the Black Coach, as we saw.
I've seen as much. It's true.
Indeed. The problem is I didn't know what bases were, so I just like guessed, and I guessed wrong in many cases. Like I realized today, Tom, when I was going through like looking at my Tzeentch stuff for S2D and my BOC, that my War Shrine is on a Knight Titan base. It's on the Coach, like 170.
I know.
Base.
We talked about
It's not on the 120.
When you were basing it, I told you that, and you're like, "I'm gonna make it look good," and I'm like,
I don't remember this discussion. I don't think that happened.
Oh, I do, because I was building a shrine at the same time I was doing my Nurgle shrine, and you're like, you were more concerned with aesthetics. We literally talked about this.
Well, there was no basic chart, so it was fine. Aesthetics was good, and I like it on the big base. By the way, broadcast a bigger aura, but but
cheat to win.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Modeling for advantage. That's what I was doing. No, I just realized that a lot of those things, like I've got 2 Gorgons on the wrong bases, because whatever. At any rate, I don't know if I'll ever rebase them or not. I probably will. I'm sure there's tons of rebasing we could all do, and it's always the lowest priority. Isn't it more fun to just paint new models? That's more fun. Just make new models and put them on the right base. Let's talk about the activation wars, guys. Sure. All right, here we go. So, also codified was a change that had actually come up a little while back, but it was buried in sort of the BOC rules.
Yep.
And it was about the sequencing of sort of a last in, first out kind of thing, where like basically the effect that happened last takes precedence. Yep. And this had been in the BOC with a specific example, but now they officially, like with this one, moved it into the core and gave a new example. With like 2 of the worst actual examples they could give. Okay.
Yeah, because it doesn't actually matter. But yeah.
Yeah, they used the locus from Slaanesh, which has its own rules that don't get overwritten by this change, and the Ironjaw Smashin' and Bashin', which isn't actually a thing that we're really concerned with triple stamping the double stamp here, right? So I've prepared a handy-dandy visualization. So let's bring up that visualization. I'm going to cover both your faces with this. And we're going to just talk it through. I'm going to let Tom talk about this. So here we go. I have my Activation Wars post-FAQ visualization.
Real quickly, just a big thanks to my friend Chad for bitching to me yesterday about all of this and how it impacted him with his Gitz army in the works, particularly Itchy Nuisance spell, which led to reaching out to Tom and all of this. So thank you, Chad.
Yeah.
You're doing a good job.
Oh, no, that's okay, Alex. It always, they just clarified it worked the way it obviously did, like based on that previous BOC thing and how common sense would work with Smashin' and Bastions. I'm not upset you emailed the question. It's a great question. It needed to be done. I'm just saying they should have reframed your question into like things we're about to talk about. So Tom, show us this infographic. Talk us through what's happening here. Talk it through.
Yeah, so basically what the FAQ has clarified, which again was always there in the Beast of Chaos, as a lot of people pointed out, but like it's been brought front and center in the core rules, is that there's implicitly a hierarchy amongst counter counter effect things, like things that are like gated, basically ones or zeros, like on or off, things that are completely mutually exclusive to effects.
Right.
What they've done is they've said that the most recent of those things to be applied always trumps.
Yep.
Like always wins in the face-off between two competing abilities. And where this is most impactful is in the activation wars, and particularly always strikes last and always strikes first abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the examples of things that are truly like opposite abilities. And so what's going to happen is that whatever gets activated most recently are going to be the things that will overwrite every other ability.
Right. So what I've prepared here is, what this means is that there is a hierarchy of power. Not all ASF or ASL is equally powerful. And I'm really killing myself right now that I didn't left align the top box on the right. It is literally killing my soul that I missed the left alignment on that. But at any rate, here we are. It gets
Vince,
bothering
for some reason
me.
I can't see it. I don't know if you could send it to me, or that's just me.
Are you? Oh, you can't see it because it's on my screen. You'd have to be watching it on
Yep.
a separate screen. But yes, I'll send it to you.
I
after.
am
I'll
watching
talk.
it on the screen.
I'll
Sure.
talk through it.
And so basically what it is that the lowest tier, and by the way, you should have inverted this. The lowest tier, the lowest powerful of the effects are what we would call persistent abilities.
No, they're ranked
They're
weakest
things-
to strongest, as it says.
Yeah,
and I'm
those are
showing what
weakest to
replaces
strongest.
it because it's cascading.
I know, but normally you want to ascend when
No,
you're
you
doing
don't.
that, not descending.
Not in
Anyway.
a turn order.
Okay. So basically what this means is that things that are persistent abilities that grant always strikes first or cause always strikes last, which there actually aren't any persistent always strikes last. But not that I know of. No.
I'm trying to think of whether I need to go look up the
frost,
the Alpha Stud guy. Yeah, that
the
Huskar. He might. I don't know if how his ASL aura is
right is worded.
Yes, but anyway.
Yep. So anything that grants a persistent ability to all things around or to itself at all times is the lowest tier. So examples of this would be like the command trait from Tempest Eye that gives the swift as the wind, which gives your general always strikes first, all like persistently. Or the Slaves to Darkness, the Demon Prince has a persistent like always strikes first ability. Those are what we would consider like the least impactful, because what's going to happen is that if you get hit with an always strikes last ability that is not persistent, like a hero phase spell, it will overwrite it. It will shut your ability off.
Correct. By the way,
Always.
just as a point, this isn't meant to be an exhaustive list. These are examples,
Yes.
just so people know what
Yes.
we're talking about. There are many others beyond what is here listed. I just wanted to make sure everybody had a grounding in the type.
Also in this is the IDK Allegiance ability.
Sure.
Because the Allegiance ability that is turning always strikes first on those units not in the phase hierarchy.
Right.
At the start of the turn, that becomes a persistent effect.
Right.
And so if they get hit with like an always strikes last ability,
with
that
say,
next hero
an itchy
phase,
nuisance in the hero phase, and then somebody hits them with a flinger, and then blah, 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 blah. Yes.
Yeah, it shuts off their always strikes first.
Yes.
The exception would be if they had been hit with that always strikes first and then double turned. Their ability would have turned on after the always strikes last. That would be the one exception to that.
Yes. You're saying if they got hit with itchy nuisance at the bottom of 2, and then got double
at the
turned
top
into
of
3.
2,
yes.
they top of 2, they get hit with itchy nuisance, and then they go bottom of 2, any time in 2, and then they go first in 3. Theirs turns on at the start of 3. The other one would be turned on in 2. It gets shut off by the always strikes first of the Ideneth.
Yes, we'll talk about interactions in a moment, but yes.
Yep.
The key here. I don't want to like super drill this down into death, Tom. But the point with this is that each later phase is going to overwrite whatever happened earlier, right? So what this creates is this natural hierarchy until we get to the combat phase where things technically get the best, but we can talk about where that gets weird in a minute because that does have its own, because that's also where you're fighting. It has its own challenges where effectively if something's happening in the combat phase, it's going to overwrite anything from before. So if you itchy nuisance those Hearthguard Zerkers, right? But they're in Hermdar. In the combat phase, they can just go like, nope. You know, and they can Colossus from X-Men and just bust out of that because that's going to overwrite it. You could hit them with Itchy Nuisance and then hit them with the Flinger, you know, and just on and just keep hitting them.
Multiple layers of Always Strikes Last. It doesn't matter. When they turn on Always Strikes First
they
in the combat phase, they will overwrite all of it. Right.
Yep. And yes, Alex, it is high. It is a persistent effect. That's the whole point. Yes, and persistent effects get overwritten by the newest effect that happened. So it's always there, but it's overwritten very easily. That's why
they don't actually gain Always Strikes First as an ability until turn 3.
But it wouldn't matter, even if it was structured differently. As a persistent thing, it's overwritten.
No,
very easily.
but he's asking about the turn 2. Like if they Itchy Nuisance in turn 2 and then it turned on in turn 3. The trait is all the turns, but that ability is not granted to them until starting at turn 3 because it's a sequencing.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's right. Hence why right. Okay, so, and by the way, the Alvagar Ancient thing is because it says at the start of the combat phase. If they're within 3 inches of this model at the start of the combat phase. So it's actually one of the more powerful Always Strike Last abilities.
Yeah.
Now, the exception to this, I would argue that the all-around most powerful versions of this, okay, like if you just average it out, would actually be the charge phase things, okay? Because because activating in the charge phase, yes, you could get. First of all, if you can activate your ability in the charge phase, like you can tend to dodge. It avoids the on your enemy's turn, their start of combat phase stuff happens first, right?
Yeah.
So
sorry, run that by me again. Say that again.
Okay, if it's not your turn, all start of combat things happen for a player based on turn priority, right?
Yep.
So if it's my turn, all of my start of combat phase stuff happens first.
Right.
Yeah? Okay.
Right.
So, like, imagine you're Hermdar. Yep. And you have this ability to ASF in the combat phase. Very powerful ability, obviously, right?
Yep.
But if it's not your turn, okay, and somebody else
Always Strikes First.
Always Strikes First, they'll beat you to the punch. Right. They'll go.
But if it's their turn, they will always do that anyways. Because all of their all their start of the combat phase happens stuff, and then all of yours does. So it doesn't matter. It will always default to player's turn.
Right.
Once you get to the combat phase.
Correct, exactly.
So that's not actually true.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. It will happen to if they didn't have any ASF at all, you can just kick on and go before them, is my point, right? But like if they have ASF, you can't beat them with your ASF in the combat phase. Anyways, you're saying if you had it earlier, sure.
Even if you had it in the combat phase, you can't beat
in the
them
charge phase. Yeah, you can't beat them because they're going to go first. Yes, I agree.
Right.
But interestingly,
I'm sure everybody followed that perfectly.
No, it's fine. I know we're going to get way. This is the problem with this. We're just going to bleed viewers because who cares? This is way too in the weeds. Here's a fun interaction, Tom. Think about this, okay?
Yep.
Think about that Alvagar Ancient we just talked about. It says at the start of the combat phase, he forces you into ASL. Okay?
Yep.
If the Fire Slayers are near him at the start of the combat phase, they get tagged with ASL during the Ogre player, and it's the Ogre player's turn. They get tagged with ASL, right? At the start.
Yep.
But the Ogre player's not fighting. They have no fight at the start, right? So then it goes to their start of the combat phase, and they just they Colossus their way out of it. Oh, they're out, right? They just it lasted a half a second.
No,
and they're right back. Because they would overwrite.
So interesting. No, so it's the inverted. So the Ogre player, it's most effective in the Fire Slayer's turn.
Correct. Yeah, because if it this is what I was going to point out, Tom.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
it's the ogre player's turn, the ogre player's ability does
Is
nothing.
worse. Right.
Right. Right.
Because
Yes.
the Hermdar can just break out of it.
Yes.
If it is the Fire Slayer's player's turn, his start of combat stuff, no, it wouldn't matter. Then he punches them to death before they can trigger their start of combat and make them fight last. So it never does anything.
Yeah, that's true.
I had to walk through that in my own head. This is very simple stuff, guys. Why can't anybody just get this? It's so easy.
So they activate, so what'll happen is on their own turn, they're going to activate to strike first and just murder him.
Anyway, I'll post this little infographic on Twitter so people can talk about
fantastic.
it. It's fun. So I don't want to get into this. But anyways, this is how it all got formalized. Now, here's what I'll say. Yes, there can be some goofy interactions like the thing we just talked about. Like that Alvagar Ancient just got so much worse in my mind. Because in so many cases like that, that's what's going to happen. You can speed of light your way out of it as well. By the way, if you're in Heish.
Well, the point, at the end of the day, the point of it is that it just means that there are some abilities that are just king.
Sure, like think about not the things. Here's what you need to keep in mind as a player. One, not all ASF and ASL are created equal. Realize that the later in the turn it's happening, the more powerful it is. That goes for you too, GW designers who might not have contemplated this level of complexity yet. I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. But think about it. Because, like, something that's persistent is weaker than something that's in combat. If they're well aware of that, kudos to you for realizing it. And that actually this isn't a big deal. Like, I know we just made all that hay of it.
Yeah.
But I actually don't think all of that's a huge deal. It causes some weird rules interactions that can sometimes pop up like that.
Right.
But, like, it's not actually a huge part of the game. Like, some of those things on my list, like, who cares?
When does Durthu stomp? People are talking about it.
At the start of the combat phase. So let's take a simple example, or hopefully a simple example. All right. Spirit of Durthu versus a Demon Prince. It's the Sylvaneth player's turn. Spirit of Durthu does the stomp on a 4-up to make the Demon Prince always strike last. It gets the 4-up. What happens then?
Whose turn is it?
It's the Sylvaneth's turn.
The Sylvaneth. Then the Demon Prince goes last.
Correct. He wins. Because it's the
Demon Prince
wins
right?
because his triggers first. He stomps. It goes last. But
so what are we doing here? This makes absolutely no sense.
Enslaved to Darkness.
If it's the S2D,
if it's their turn, they go first and they strike first before the stomp ever happens.
Right. Correct.
Because
they get to do all their start of combat stuff before you do.
All start of combat stuff first happens for the for the activating player first, and then all the other start of combat for the other player happens.
Okay, so ASF trumps ASL.
Well, in this case,
well, that's in this
particular case.
Because it's not trumping it, because the effects actually are never interacting. Because by the time you stomp, he's already activated, and so he's not going to activate anymore, anyways.
Right?
Yeah.
Unless the Chaos Lord buff is on him, which he gets to activate twice.
If that's true, then he gets to fight twice, and the other strike first.
Okay.
Yeah, he strikes first, and that second time gets pushed to the end.
No, he wouldn't. He'd strike twice first.
Because would he really?
Yeah, the Chaos Lord buff
is
as
soon as they're done
you activate
activating
the first time, when you have another valid activation, which, by the way, is immediately after that in the ASF phase, because it just says during combat. And and they have clarified during to be start, normal, and end.
Oh, that's a good call.
The Chaos Lord can make him double tap during start of combat.
Yeah, because always strikes first, because it's a persistent effect, it applies to all of their activations.
And the answer, Aaron, is no. The Sylvaneth would not just cancel out, and then they would not fight normally. The whole, like, you put an ASF plus an ASL and you get a neutral, that kind of makes sense.
That only works.
That only
works in Slaanesh.
Yes, because
with Slaanesh
that rule is codified to say that.
Because that is actually codified. And so Slaanesh actually breaks this sequencing.
Oh, I'm so confused.
And so the only exception to all of these always strikes last is if it's the locust. If it's the locust, then they literally, you just remove both abilities from the War Scrolls.
Lava juice. Amen.
Yeah, this like I said, here's the thing. I play a lot of games, and do you know how often one of these interactions actually comes up? About never. Okay? Like, it just doesn't happen that these two things slam into each other that often. Sometimes they will, though. Like, and it's
if you're on top tables, you need to know how this works.
Right, and it is this weird corner case of the rules in most of your games. Oh, the Chaos Lord probably is only for mortal units. That's true.
Oh, yeah, that's a good call.
There you go. Fair dinkum. Sorry, so let's say a Chaos Lord on Manicore wearing the Helm of Many Eyes. Boom, there it is. Got it. Now he can get in there and double tap Durthu before Durthu can stomp him. Thank you.
He can.
Yeah, we haven't done the S2D, so I review yet, so I don't have all their rules locked in my head. I apologize.
Thank you, that one would work. Yes. If you're running the spoilers with the Helm of Many Eyes.
Yeah. Boom. Nailed it. All right. So, at any rate.
I know we probably want to wrap this up, but I'm trying to simplify this. What world were we in before this happened? What
we were in this world.
It was in this world. It just hadn't. That's my whole point. It's been like this for like 8 months.
What world were we in before we realized we had been in this world? Before the Taurus fell?
Chaos. No good answer.
Yeah, people didn't have a real
answer not found.
People didn't have a real clear idea of how this stuff interacted, and they would argue about it. And unless you had all the FAQs, including the Beasts of Chaos FAQ in mind, because again, this is just a movement of the Beasts of Chaos FAQ into the main rules. Okay, this did not change this.
What the world that I thought we were in, because I didn't know about the Taurus fact, was when we just mentioned a few minutes ago, maybe someone in the comments mentioned it. When you have a situation of an always strike first getting turned off by an always strike last, they cancel out, and then it goes to who has priority, whose turn is it? So you go to normal activation sequence.
That was only with Slaanesh.
Right. That would be logical, what you're saying, but that's not how it works. Because of the way they've construed the start and the end of combat phase to work.
Right. Okay. All right. It's probably going to take too long to figure this out.
You're good. If this is all confusing to you, don't worry. Like I said, we've lived in this world for 9 months. This just codified it into the core rules. And it's always been in the FAQ. It was just hidden in Beast, and nobody really thought about it. If you haven't experienced this in your games, that's not surprising to me. Because it's not going to come up a whole lot.
But what I'll say is this. The difference is in the last 9 months, we've gotten like 10 books added.
Sure. With a lot of these sort of abilities.
Most of those books have these abilities. That's the difference. And so now we can look at the Slaves of Darkness and see a persistent effect, an item effect triggered on charges, and a spell all in the same book. And you spread that out across 10 books, suddenly it's really going to start... This stuff is going to start clashing into one another in increasing measure. And so that's why we need to know. That's why we need to know.
It's an amazing amount of weird oddities and picadillos and what the rules makes. And frankly, it needs to be unwound. Like, not for any reason. We'll talk about it later. This is in the meta discussion design. We'll talk about it in that. This should all be unwound. Anyways, there you go. That's that. That's the news. There you go. News done.
We're on a good pace here, gentlemen.
All right, standard show. Okay.
Not looking good for my 90-minute cap that we were aiming for.
Well, we knew this show and next show were going to go long, but yeah, we'll stick to your time. Tom is in the final, just so everybody's aware. Tom is in the final stages of his dissertation. He's doing really well. So we're going to try to keep our shows beyond this and Slaves to Darkness next week, which will be on Christmas Day. And I was like, are you really writing your dissertation on Christmas Day? But we will try to keep them pretty tight for Tom, because him graduating after being in school for basically his whole life is pretty important for him and his family.
His marriage?
And his marriage. So
and my marriage.
By his wife, yes.
You all wanted another spouses show. That might happen just so my wife can get me off of the show to do my own work.
Yeah. But not tonight. As you can see,
No.
don't worry, we're gonna keep going. So anyway, let's talk about some pick of the week. All right, so Tom, what would you like to share?
Can I choose something that has nothing to do with any of this?
Yeah, man.
This is truly like nothing to do with our hobby at all.
What are you gonna share, Tom?
Actually, I want to thank Tyler for this. Tyler, thank you for sharing this link with us yesterday. Tyler was looking like this is a momentous week. I don't know if y'all realize this. Even though it might very well be terrible. Rise of Skywalker comes out this week.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
And this is like the culmination of 42 years of film.
Sure. Or as some
Okay.
people would say, not a big deal. But yeah, that's fine. Like what you like.
I mean,
Like what
and
you
so
like.
sure. And so what I'm going to say is that Tyler offered this. He was looking for a positive review of Star Wars,
The Last Jedi in particular.
of The Last Jedi.
I'm trying to get myself
And-
pumped up for this week. Yeah.
No, it was good. And he found a video, and it was like 25 minutes long, and it is basically an overview of the first 8 movies, the first 8 episodes, right, in the Skywalker saga.
Yeah.
But it's not like somebody talking about it. It's literally like movie clips cut over 25 minutes
Yeah,
of
sure.
all the
Just
movies
sums
run
up all the
together.
movies. Yeah.
Like where you get all the major beats of the movie, and it's all set to like the normal Star Wars scores, right? Greedo does not show up in it because again, it's the major movie beats. It's the major introduction of characters. It's the major kind of turns. It's all of those things that capture the essence of the first 8 movies with a lot of the bad stuff removed.
Sure. Oh, that's cool.
And so it's a very inspiring like 25-minute take on those 8 movies. And it's a great watch if you're wanting like I was watching it yesterday and it grabbed my wife's interest, and I was like, here, I know you don't remember what happened in most of these movies because that's not how your brain works. And I know you're not going to watch 8 movies. So watch the rest of this with me and remind yourself of what came before.
Very nice. No, that's fair.
So-
I don't want to dwell on it, but if you're excited, cool. I'll link Tom's sum up video. All right. And that's fair. It's a big deal. I mean, I'm going this weekend. I'm excited. I like the movies. Yay. Movies are fun. Isn't it nice that we live in a world where they happen? All right. So, Tyler, you have like 17 picks of the week, I'm sure.
I'll skip it. Yeah, I had a whole slideshow prepared and everything. I spent 15 minutes on it, but we'll skip it and just mention a few. Ben Curry and Ben Johnson. So Ben Curry on Twitter, he did a Warhammer list of the decade. Best Warhammer army list he played with over the last 10 years. Fantastic thread. And then Ben Johnson shamelessly copied it by doing a Warhammer model of the decade, which is arguably even better and includes all kinds of beautiful models, including a set of 4 by someone incredibly depraved and who might happen to be on this show, showing off his... I don't want to talk about those models. So,
Those
yeah.
beautiful, beautiful keepers, yes.
Mhm,
Truly the
yeah.
greatest model of the decade. All others pale in comparison.
Indeed.
I put my my black coach up there because I felt like it was a wonderful reimagining of that model, and it was truly a joy to paint. Like of all of the Nighthaunt that I painted, like it was probably one of the most fun. It was the most fun of my Nighthaunt.
Nice.
Yeah, it is awesome. I love how you did that, and very practical.
Thanks.
Makes it a lot easier to play with that model.
It does.
So yeah, check that out. We'll include links to those amazing threads for wrapping the year up and the decade. And then we've got Mr. Mephisto has been knocking it out of the park with his rantcast. Chuck Moron recently. I think he just did a show today. He had an
Chuck
amazing
Moron.
show, The Psychology. What's that?
I said Chuck Moron.
That's mean.
Chuck Moore.
Chuck Moore is a very smart guy.
He
How
is.
dare you, Tyler? How dare you?
Thanks, man.
The Psychology of Sigmar, talking about, there was another show that they did talking about all kinds of fascinating subjects for wonky people. And yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Right
I'll
on.
do 5 more.
Well, my pick of the week is I want to share a site that I go to often here. As Golden Demon is upcoming in the U.S., and people are probably, when this, like I imagine maybe some people who are thinking about competing here in the U.S. are thinking about stuff that they would want to have to compete. And there's a wonderful site that I utilize called competitionminis.com. I'll link it down below. You can get plinths and paint, and it's really, really a great site. It's run by an awesome guy who really, really has basically everything you would ever want as far as doing great bases and dioramas and everything like that you would want. So Competition Minis, go check them out. It's run by a gentleman and his wife who are both like two of the nicest people in the world. It is a great store. There's a physical store there in Maryland, so if you're in that area, you can go actually to the store. But there you go. That's like, check them out. If you're looking for like I don't know where to get plinths, or I don't know where to get the stuff that people make with bases, like where there's a wall behind the character or whatever. Hey, you can get all that stuff there. They have it all. So there you go. That's where I get most of my stuff. So,
Sweet.
Cool. All right. And by the way, yes, I purposely didn't talk about the Slaanesh changes, even though they were big, because I'm going to use them to segue into our ladder discussion. Cool? Okay. Because I imagine there were people wondering why we didn't cover the Slaanesh changes in the big FAQ, which were big. We will. Don't worry. Let's talk hobby time.
I got some games in last weekend.
All right, man.
Nice.
What'd you play?
First games in months, many months.
Good. What were you playing?
Yeah, we had a 14-player one-dayer at Metagames. It was fantastic.
Nice.
Shouts to the St. Louis crew, Jeff and Paul and all those guys for coming down. We had 6 folks from St. Louis come down, and they brought some terrain, and yeah, it's an amazing time.
Nice. Awesome. Tom.
I guess so. By the way, the list that won, it was Laron's. He had like 6 Stonehorns and Thunder Tusk, and that was basically it.
I loved everything.
Yeah, the full
about
monster
and
truck
kicked the
boulder head
hell out of
list.
everybody. Yeah.
Nice.
Fantastic. Me, huh?
Yep.
I am putting together Chaos Knights.
Dun 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 dun. Are those old Cast Knights or new Cast Knights? Those are old.
These are old ones.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. I have models, and I'm not buying new ones. Yeah, I'm putting those together. I may or may not play Slaves of Darkness this weekend when I come visit you, Vince.
Sure.
I'm actually like, as I was complaining to Vince in a very first world manner, there's a profusion of riches right now, where like I don't know whether to play STD, Fire Slayers, Cities, or Night Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have like 4 actually very like hyper competitive armies, and I don't know what to play.
Well, the Johnny and you, there's an obvious Johnny answer, Tom.
Oh,
Night Hunt.
yeah, maybe.
What?
Maybe. I mean,
okay.
yes, but
that's where the glory exists. Who's been kicking the hell out of the tournament scene with Night Hunt? Not Legions of Grief, but Night Hunt. Nobody.
Well, who's been kicking the hell out of it with Tempest Eye? All of it's been Hollowheart.
Oh, Tempest Eye.
How many dwarves have you seen out on the table?
Well,
I do want to see his Tempest Eye list at the table.
You just have a
mostly
really
dwarves.
good Tempest Eye dwarf list. Yeah.
I think it is good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. Like all of them, I'm like just short on models painted. Actually, Night Haunt, I have to paint the most models. I have to paint like 60 some models in order to put my Night Haunt list on the table. Where like most of my dwarves are done but a handful. For slaves, most of my slaves are done but a handful. For Fire Slayers, like most of them are actually like down to like highlights. And
it's all irrelevant, Tom, because the KO book's going to come out and that's what you're going to be playing.
Well, which like that might be possible too. Like I may drop and just play KO. So I don't know is the answer, and I'm struggling because like I have all these like very close to high tier competitive armies almost painted, and it's just so I'm putting together Chaos Knights so that I don't have to paint anything, so I can actually play my slaves list that I want to run in.
Sure.
So we'll see. I don't know.
Do you think they're pretty well priced? 180?
I think they should be 160 or 170.
That was my sense as well.
I agree with that. I think 160 would make them a lot more competitive.
Yeah,
but I think
but at that point, But at that point,
That'd be a little.
10 knights for 320 versus 3 Vanguard.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's not even like you're not even in the same ballpark. So
Yeah.
like I think that there's.
That's why I said 170.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is this: I think 5 knights are still really competitive, and actually, since they're on 75 mil, like I don't know if that's changed or not, but they're on 75 mil rounds as Cav. Like that's not yeah, they're not on the 60 mil ovals. They're like the 55s. They're on the 75, and like getting 10 of those in actually kind of an issue.
Sure.
Yeah, like.
Well, we'll talk about it in the S2D review next week because I think everything in CAS is slightly overpriced, and I think that's okay. That's good. So there you go.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like, yay. That means we can only get more value for our money as time goes on.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's fine. My hobby time. I, too, got a fun game in this last weekend where I took out a 1,500-point Tzeentch Slaves to Darkness list, Host of the Everchosen. And you know what you get in 1,500 points in Host of the Everchosen? Basically nothing. Because my army consists of, like, Archeon, 3 Varangard, 5 Chaos Warriors, a War Shrine, and a Chariot. And that was the list. And it died real bad. It like Archeon got chumped with some of the worst rolling ever, but it was a lot of fun. Tzeentch, I think, is the weakest option in the book. We'll talk about that more next week, which is a shame because that's the whole massive Slaves to Darkness army I have painted. But that's okay. That's fine.
My Nurgle, super happy.
I'm sure. But on the whole, it was still a lot of fun. I did really enjoy putting those models on the table again, and it got me so keen and pumped that I was like, you know what? I got to get some more stuff ready. I got to get painting on them more Slaves to Darkness. Like the Tempest army, I finished up my 2 additional gyrocopters and my steam tank, and I'll work on that. But those things are big conversions. I got to start working on some more stuff. I got to get the Slaanesh Slaves to Darkness ready because that's what I really want. So, of course, what model did I jump to, Tom? Out of the whole Slaves to Darkness range, what would be the thing that I would be like, this is what I've got to attack first? I've got to get this thing done.
War Shrine.
It would be the Slaughter Brute, Tom. That would be the thing I would pick. That's right. Everybody's hot pick coming out of the book strong with the Slaughter Brute. I've had this little guy for a while, and I was like, I already have a Tzeentch Slaughter Brute and a Tzeentch Mutalith Vortex Beast. So, yes, that's right. I already have one of these each painted. And I was like, you know what? I need a third one of these things.
You're out of your mind. Although, like, I think that you should do a Slaanesh Soul Grinder. Like, we haven't heard any Soul Grinder talk, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
Like, I actually like really like the Soul Grinder.
Good buy, yeah. Reasonable buy.
I don't know.
Yeah. I have don't worry, I've got a Soul Grinder still sitting in box 2 just waiting. So he'll pop up all the bad units. So yeah,
hey,
I'm working on this
I
guy.
like the Soul Grinder what he's priced at, but we'll talk about that.
Sure. No, I don't know. This is just a really fun model. Like these Slaughter Brutes are actually a really fun, cool model. So I just wanted to paint him up because I really enjoy him. So yeah, there you go.
Nice.
So he'll be a fun toy to play with in that army. Well, whatever. He can double hit on 6s in the aura. It's cool or something. Probably not. No, because I don't think he gets marked. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. He can exist. That's what he can do. He can exist and make attacks, and that's fine. He's just a fun big monster to paint. I like painting big monsters. All right.
So, before I forget.
Yeah.
So, AOSevents.org. Dan of AOS Shorts is still updating it for 2020 events happening in 2020. Anybody has any, just reach out to me or Dan on Twitter or Vince or whomever, and we'll get the events added. Especially interested in any Q1 events with United States buy. I don't know of that many Q1 events that are happening other than the mainstays, the LVOs and whatnot. So yeah, we'd love to hear about any events, tournaments, that are going on anywhere in the world. AOSevents.org. We're compiling them.
Nice. Yes, I do love that I've built 2 Slaughter Brutes and neither of them have the only mark this thing can actually take, which is corn. Who cares? It's fine. Who wants that crappy mark? At any rate, let's talk about, gentlemen, I want to transition into this, and I want to transition into this way. So we're going to talk about meta and sort of design philosophies. So Slaanesh also had big changes in the FAQ. And the big changes were basically this. The depravity to summon was bumped up significantly. 20% sort of for the lower hanging thing, or the items that aren't as valuable or chosen as often, and 50% for the like hot picks, as it were.
Well, the stuff that refunds its own depravity.
For things like keepers and yeah, stuff like that. So let's call it 20 to 50%. The most important part being a keeper of secrets used to cost 30 depravity to bring back on the table. I know everybody always was like, 6 depravity to be gained, and everybody'd be like, well, that's another keeper. That's not actually that easy, but okay, fine. But it moved from 30 to 45, and which is obviously a significant hit to how fast you can summon another one on. And as well, the locus of diversion moved from a base 4 up to a 5 up. And obviously the keeper will still add the +2 to that, so it'll now trigger on a 3+.
Yep.
Now, we're not going to get into what that means for Slaanesh, because this isn't yet another Slaanesh show. I will simply say I was very happy with these changes. I think it did most of the work that needed to be done. I think that was very positive. I think they addressed the 2 chief sort of offending things of Slaanesh. And I was excited because I said, okay, I feel good about this. I feel like I can bring the army back out now.
Yep.
So I don't know if it was you. Somebody made the comparison that in some ways Slaanesh is the KO of combat.
I said that, yes.
Okay, yeah. Which I really resonate. Yeah, I've always felt that about Slaanesh, that this is a difficult challenge for them to try to get this right. It could easily tip over in the wrong direction. I always felt that when playing Slaanesh, even though it was strong.
Yeah, the reason I call them the KO, their melee KO, is because one of the most challenging things for GW to traditionally balance has been like the all offense glass cannony armies, right?
Speed kills, yeah.
Because when all you have is kill, right?
Yeah.
Because the challenge there becomes like, how do those armies actually balance? Because if they're just slightly too strong, they'll just plow through everybody, and that's what happened with Slaanesh, and frankly, like early KO too, right?
Yeah,
right.
And if you weaken them down just like a step too much, it's a house of cards that falls apart, because they can't punch hard enough to remove things, and they cannot take even a moderate hit, so everybody just punches them off the table, right? So it's just a tough balancing act. I'm sensitive to that.
But and we also haven't been in the heavy shooting, heavy durability meta over this year since Slaanesh was released. So there's that factor as well. We've had some shooting, but it hasn't really been that heavy.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, so Alex had said he thought that they should have pushed the keeper to like a +1. There's several different ways they could have went about it. I am happy with this. That's what I'll say. I feel like the army's okay. I think things like the epitome are better now, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Anywho, the reason I use that to segue into it is because I want to talk about the nature of design. That's what we're going to talk about a lot here, especially in the meta and how this works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that one of the most common refrains that people say is like this. I hear this all the time. Is like, how did they miss that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And like, people made very disparaging comments about some book authors recently, and I don't support that at all. If you're disparaging one of the writers, the rules writers of the books, you have never created a role playing or game supplement, because you would understand that it's actually much harder than you think it is. There is opportunity for improvement here, of course. But I have no patience for insulting people who are working very hard to do nothing but entertain you and bring you fun. That is unacceptable. Right. You can complain about the product. You do not attack the person. The person is nothing but a good person who's trying to work hard to do good by you. Okay?
Yep.
That's unacceptable. If you differ with that opinion, I don't care. I'm going to plant that flag solidly.
Yep.
But that doesn't mean, by the way, that like bad design is suddenly okay, because again, you can have bad or gets a pass. It just means we don't attack people. We look at products and say, this is how this should have been better. Right. And so And even with that, even so, that little dumb graphic that went around wasn't even correct because they left armies off of it intentionally where some of the authors had crossed over and because it destroyed the narrative. Always be wary of propaganda like that.
Sure.
At any rate, what I want to say is here's my supposition off the rip. Okay. Right now, especially post this FAQ, the game is trending toward the best place it's ever been in AOS history. We will have more armies in the fat middle where they should be. And I'll define the fat middle. Let's just call the fat middle right now a 40 to 60% win rate. Maybe we need to be aimed tighter. Maybe eventually we go 45 to 55. But let's call it 40 to 60% right now. Okay?
Like a global win rate. Yep.
Sure. Which the closest take we have on that is LV stats. And those should not be treated as like Bible truth. Okay? They are what they are. They are statistics. They can have underlying interesting quirks and picadillos. Correlation doesn't always equal causation. Blah, 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 blah. Okay? But they're good and they're useful. And they should be instructive and give us things to think about and value and evaluate. They shouldn't be the end of the discussion. They should be the beginning. It shouldn't be like, well, this army's at 43%, hence it's garbage.
Right.
Stormcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's
Right.
just...
You'd ask like, why is it at 43%?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you can have some critical discussions about that, right? Because maybe
Right.
it's the design of the book, maybe it's the nature of the current meta, maybe it's 100 other things, right? And that should be investigation. Okay. As someone who one of their core jobs in life, like what I do in my day job, is actually design very high-level, complicated analytics for things, and works with data scientists to do this kind of stuff. Like, we don't start with data and then go, there you go, there's all your answers, problem solved. You start with data, and then you synthesize data. At any rate, so we'll pause there. Agree with that statement? We're trending toward the best place ever.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely.
Yeah. Tom?
Yep.
Tom isn't there, but he agrees. He agrees at a distance.
Yes.
Yeah, like I think that we're yeah, I agree, Alex. Alex just nailed it. Like stats are a starting point to discover the underlying root causes. That's a great way to say it. So I think we're in a very good place. That doesn't mean we're perfect, but I mean I think it's what we're seeing is a lot of trending toward most armies falling in this space, right?
Right.
And so one of the things that kind of prompted this discussion originally, Tyler, because this whole show kind of came about from a discussion you and I had.
Yeah.
So let me set this up real quick. We're going to go real inside baseball here, folks. You ready? Let's get into it. Okay. So Tyler, you had said, how hard is it to design toward sort of the fat middle, right?
Right.
And I said, I don't think it's actually that hard. Okay.
Design and develop.
Well, I'll get there.
Okay.
Exactly. It's not hard if you're designing and developing toward it for the most part. That doesn't mean it's easy. I'm just saying it's not an impossible task, given the war scrolls and the variables we have here. Right? And I think that's proved out by where we are right now. Like, I'm not saying they're not working hard. They've worked hard. I'm saying it's doable. Because, like, what I was trying to answer was it's not an impossible task. Right? Because that's the first question. Like, if it's not even possible, if there's just too many variables, well, then we have to just throw our hands up. Right?
Right.
So my answer would be it is a challenge of both creativity and process. And this is where like the author thing goes off the rails. If you can like things like this are a group project, right?
Oh yes.
They're the work of
Absolutely.
many people.
Yep.
And my supposition has always been that like if I could change one thing about GW's creation process, it would be to formalize and separate a formal designer from a formal developer. So let me see if I can explain those roles, because Tom and I have actually used this. Tom and I have used this very structure when we design our own books. Designers are not supposed to care about balance. They're not supposed to care about what makes the most sense rules-wise. Designers are supposed to be creative and explore design
Define
space.
Yeah.
They're supposed to look at the army, the thing, whatever it is. Doesn't matter if you're doing like if you're trying to make a new class in, you know, a role-playing game or something like a D&D type game, whether you're trying to make a new magic card, whether you're trying to make a new army. Designers are supposed to swing for the fences. They're supposed to get crazy. They're supposed to look at a thing, play around with both top-down and bottom-up design, and just go nuts, right? And try to make the most fun, interesting, compelling version of a thing they can make. And that is all they should be concerned with.
They should never test.
Correct. For the same reason you don't have developers test their own code when you're writing software, right? Like, you unit test to make sure it actually works, but they're not actually the ones doing the QA. Developer's job is to be the accountant, right? It's to come back in and be the numbers person, the person who has a really good conception of like how things need to be constrained, and they go behind and just like an editor, right, doesn't like goes and reworks your if you're the writer, you have an editor who's probably doing significant rework on your novel.
Yeah.
Right? That's what the developer's doing for the designer. They come in and they say, actually, these are the numbers we need to correct here. This is how we need to formalize this. This is going to have a bad interaction here. This is out of whack with what units of this type should do. This is too much punch for a 25 mil base size. This is not enough punch for a 40 mil base size, right? Like they should have, they're just running calculations, right? And like when
they run permutations, that's all they do.
Yep. And they're basic QAing. It's the same as any QA process in like something like software design, right? Yeah, exactly. You segregate duties because you can't review your own work effectively. And that's exactly right. So, like, this is a very classic, this isn't like some revolutionary thing I'm talking about, right? But you need to have somebody this is their formal job. It's not just having somebody else check your work. Yes, of course, that happens already. I have no doubt that's already happening, that other people are looking at the work, because it is all a team process. But there's a difference between having your buddy read your new novel, okay, and having an editor whose sole job in life, like the reason they show up to work in the morning, is to curate and manicure and improve writing into something that will sell.
Yeah.
And is functional and good, right? That's different than passing it to your buddy and saying, what do you think of this book? Is it good? Two completely different things. Even if your buddy likes to read a lot, okay? He can be a great reader. He can be a big fan of novels, all right? Because when I look at the challenges that we have right now in the game, to me, it's always singular exceptions in otherwise quite well done things, right? The books...
It's always a development issue.
It's always a development issue. When I look at the books that have come out, I'm so shocked by the consistent quality across the board of these books.
Yeah,
it's easy to let it become a forest for the trees thing. But when I look at these books, I'm blown away by how good and how compelling so many of the books over the last year have been. But they'll often have, like, the fatal flaw. Yeah? The gristle gore, the locust depravity, right, or whatever. Like, they didn't change any Slaanesh points, and I think that's telling. Right?
If
they were
fatal,
pointed correctly.
You're not necessarily defining fatal flaw. Fatal flaw in what sense? In the sense
this one thing that becomes the thing that defines the whole
like
world.
That, it skews the entire project.
The perception of it.
I think a lot of people think right now it's early, but if you look at AOSreminders.com data, it's a very strong majority, 85% or something, that are choosing Petrifix Elite.
Right. Yeah, that's a great example.
It's early, but still, that's probably meaningful.
Yep.
Which, by the way, AOS Reminders is like another great data source we should be looking at on the other side. Because, like, with tournaments and tournament results, that gets skewed by a lot of stuff. The player, the scenario, the tournament, the terrain, the realm rules, blah, 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 blah. There's 100 different intangible, invisible things. And LLV does a good job of correcting for some of that. And he can regress some of that stuff out. But it's tough. My point is there's a lot of variables. He is excellent at what he does. But... like, AOS Reminders is just giving you raw data on choices, and it's not just tournaments. It's
on
just
preference.
Lists, on preference. And that's very interesting on the other side of the equation, right? It's very valuable. Right?
Yeah. It's a different data point.
And Autumn Lotus, yes, even with Maw Tribes, I stand behind that. Like, there are things in Maw Tribes I look at and go, that's a shame. That should have been, like, that could have been done. It feels like they left part of the room unfinished. But the stuff that's
Right.
in there, like, I love new Gluttons. I love new Stonehorns. I love new... I think Iron Guts are good. I like the Tyrant. I think he's fun. I think Butcher and Slaughtermaster are both really good. Like, yeah, the Gutbuster side came out way better, but there's still fun stuff in Beasts. I had that Murderhorn go through like half our side of the table on Saturday.
Right.
Okay, that guy's a beast and a half. You
Yeah,
know,
just
so
to
like,
unpack this a little bit more. So with the example of Petrifix Elite, when I think about the Sylvaneth book mentioned, oh, what's up?
just AOS Coach said if only someone made a video about the AOS reminder data. Shout out to
Oh, yes.
AOS Coach. Go sub to his channel.
Definitely.
He's doing some good data about that stuff. AOS Coach, keep it up.
Yeah,
I
that was a
loved that video. It was
great
awesome
video.
stats. And those kind of preferences and choices were fantastic to see. So
Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
those summarizes were excellent, Coach. You did a fantastic bang up job. Like, really, I loved that vid. Okay, anyway, I'm sorry, Tyler. Please.
Yeah, that this is a perpendicular variable, or however you'd like to say it. It's another variable to consider with regard to this overall designing and developing for the fat middle discussion. That is, it's another very evident, I would say, core first principle or core value that they have in the design that they're going for in the design of their battle tomes. That is, that they are, if you look at STD, Slaves to Darkness, they've made a very deliberate effort to try to create a pretty wide range of viable variety, of good diversity, where you've got interesting options and you don't have an outcome of 85% of the player base choosing one sub-allegiance. You don't have an outcome where it's Hagnar and mostly only Hagnar, particularly in a competitive context. I love the Sylvaneth book because, to me, it could have improvements on the margins, but generally when I look at that book, I see a stronger, clear signal of viable variety of different play styles that are sufficiently attractive. Not perfect, but sufficiently attractive. Even once Gristlegore got addressed, I think Feck is an amazing example of that. 3 out of those 4 sub-allegiances are pretty attractive, especially from a competitive standpoint. So anyway, to me, that's another core value among a set of core values or first principles to think about.
Yeah, and my argument is a lot of these like what ends up happening with these one standout glaring issues or whatever you want to call it. If you don't like my use of the term one, like these cracks, right?
Yeah.
That's the job of development to catch that stuff. And I think a lot of this ends up getting like it shouldn't be the job of playtesters to catch that stuff, by the way. That's too late in the process. Okay?
Right.
Like that shouldn't
playtesters should never see that stuff.
Right.
Ever.
Now
they should be focusing on stress.
More rarely.
Right. Yeah.
Much more
they
rarely.
should be focused on stress testing. They shouldn't be focusing on design testing. Yeah. There's a difference there. One is sharpening design. The other is confirming the design and development that's been done.
Right. Yeah. And I do say S2D, not STD. I've switched to S2D. That way we're, it just.
Sure. Yeah, okay. Much better.
I play Nurgle. It's STD.
Sure. Fair enough. So at any rate, I think that is one of the big ways that could like address some of this. Now, again, none of this is like an indictment this is not an attack in any way, because that's why I started by saying, at the end of every piece of work that I do, I with my day job, I work in a agile, methodology. So I work in a Scrum team, and at the end of everything, we inspect and adapt. What did we do? What do we want to keep? What do we want to change? What could we do better? Even when we have things we nail and knock out of the park, we still ask all those questions. I think it's just healthy to do so. And I think that on the whole, what we've seen is a lot of great design, even under a tight time frame, because this stuff has been rolling fast.
Yeah.
And I'm impressed.
They've pitched down the middle a lot,
especially for these recent books.
Yes.
Right? Now, where it seems to me they still have, and I think when you look at how they're solving the problem right now with sweat, right? With sweat equity. What I mean by that is they're working harder and building tribal knowledge on how to correct this stuff. Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
That's why we
Okay,
see the
yep.
trend toward more positive. Where things go off kilter are when you hit lower frequency things that don't have the same number baseline to balance against.
New design space.
Correct. Yep.
Right.
So a frequent source of challenges are with the chamber design, right? Since we started going to chambers,
Yeah.
those tend to be the swingiest elements of a lot of books they show up in, right?
Right.
Because that isn't just numbers based. You can look at a war scroll and it's a pretty limited number of variables, right? Like you can know if you write down that something hits on 2s and wounds on 2s and rerolls 1s, you get an idea of like what you're doing there.
Right. But they only get 4 bites of this apple every book.
Right, exactly. There are thousands of war scrolls. There's like 30 different of these chamber things written, right? And they have to be, and they're balanced mainly on opportunity cost. Yeah? Like, because it's not formal point costed. So they have a different balancing mechanism, opportunity cost.
Right.
And they have a much smaller sample set to work from. And they frequently have to explore. Their job is usually to explore the design space introduced by the rules of the book itself.
Right.
Does that make sense what I'm saying there?
Yes. And so it's meta design. It's design
that has to be layered.
That's layered. Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Like we introduced Aura of Chaos in the S2D book, right? And then in the chamber, we're going to say, well, the normal 12-inch aura becomes an 18-inch aura, right? That's layered design. Yeah.
Right.
You've introduced
Not only did they create,
you're stacking on top of it.
Yep.
So if you're off slightly, you can this is where it can like
on either layer of design.
Right. Then it can you'll get the Leaning Tower of Pisa there all of a sudden.
Right.
So, I think those are the elements that stand out, which to me says, like, again, a formal developer would help. But even barring that, what I would do is, barring that, I would say, okay, this is where we need to redouble our efforts to really make sure that these are in line and really focus very hard before these go out the door. Because when you look at Petrifex, something like Petrifex is a great example.
Yeah.
It's the problem child of the Bone Daddies, right? Like, the Bone Daddy book I really like and think as well, and then I look at Petrifex and I'm like, why? But why? Right?
Yeah.
So
the best D and the best O combined in one thing.
Right. That book, like I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. That +1 blanket save across all war scrolls in that subfaction should have never hit design or never passed development.
Sure.
Ever. There's nothing else in the game that does that. And what I'm saying is not just like gives a blanket bonus, but moves that number, save, for everything. Unanimous of whatever it's modifying.
In an already fairly high armor.
In an already fairly high armor situation. Because that +1 to save as a type of bonus is very rare in this game now. It's very rare.
We've had Fire Slayers, we've had Staunch Cast, but those have more built-in limitations. It's not armor-wide.
Yeah.
Right.
Like a Battlesmith with a bubble, he's got to navigate. A Stargate with a bubble, they've got to navigate.
Nurgle War Shrine just got it, and it's like,
you've got to be marked Nurgle, and it's one prayer on a 3-up.
It's a 1 prayer on a 3-up, not the entire army.
Right. Now, partly, and when I was talking with Vince about this earlier today, what I'm hearing is it's almost in some ways not a question of whether the meta can respond to Petrifex Elite, which I suspect it can. I'm not necessarily convinced that Petrifex Elite is going to get a 70% win rate over the next 6 or so months. It's clearly going to be strong. But is that fair that you're emphasizing something different than just simply this question of, well, yeah, it's strong, but the meta can adapt to it for reasons X, Y, Z?
Yeah, my answer is I don't care about the meta or how it adapts to it or anything like that, right? Like, because none of that matters to me. It's just like, it's flawed at a conceptual design basis of we shouldn't take the best defensive buff and one of the best offensive buffs we can hand out in the game. Like, playing with armor is very powerful because it's a very limited controlled resource. There's a reason that, like, nobody has... Is there a Rend Neg 4 written on a sheet anywhere?
Nope.
Okay.
No, you can get it, but no.
Yeah, like what is it? Isn't Volturnus the guy who has his special sword that can like make it
Oh.
when he rolls a 6 to wound or something? It's like
That's
Red
right,
Neg 5 or something
-5, I
crazy.
think. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And like if there's a couple Red Neg 3s around that you could buff and whatever.
Well, there's an
Sometimes.
item that you can give generically heroes.
For Red Neg 3, yeah. But like that's my point. They know how powerful and potent that thing is, right? Your one magic item could be making one guy Ren Neg 3, right? So being able to just like blow a bunch of units up one rend, right? Pushing everybody to Neg 2 or Neg 3, depending on the units we're talking about, is just ultra powerful.
Like rune lords in dwarves, right? Rune lords are considered kings because they can increase one dwarven unit on a 2+ up rend 1. And that's a really big deal.
That's a super powerful prayer.
That's a super powerful prayer. That makes the Rune Lord. Okay?
Right.
And yet, they can do it to any unit in melee for a resource that they get refreshing, like a bucket load every turn.
Right. And so my ultimate argument would be like, we need to be like to transition this discussion of like away from have that formal development. When I think about units, here's my supposition. The problem units in the game right now, the boogeymen, okay, are very rarely single models. Sometimes they are, but most of the time they're not. Because single models don't win this game very well.
Yeah.
Right? Single models have a built-in weakness.
Limitation. Yep.
That is to say, other than like your murder horn or your crunch horn, right? Who count as 10 models, which is amazingly good.
Yeah.
The most one models are one model, and this is an objective-based game. In scenarios now where there is a battle plan, or there's a battle plan where you have 8 objectives on there.
Right.
A single guy can just very easily not do much there, right?
Yeah.
And I think we need to reorient the way we think about value of models, because most of the problem things in the game are when you can get a large unit that can do good O and good D, right?
Yeah.
And can hold objectives with bodies. Yeah.
Because large units are naturally the best thing at the game, right?
Yeah.
At playing the game.
Vince always busts my chops because I always choose armies that are blocks of troops.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Like if it's up to me, I am always running blocks of 20 or 30. Always.
Yes.
Because from a raw utility in the game, they're just too valuable. They just are.
Yeah. So like the point being, right, is that when you look at the Hearthguard Berserkers, GGR, Grimcast Reapers, Witch Elves, what else?
Sequitors before they went up a little bit, but yeah.
Sure.
There's a whole bunch of examples, yeah.
Mortek Guard.
Mortek Guard.
In Petrifex. Right? The problem with all these units is off the rip, 30 to 40 dudes has an immense advantage in the game. Like just right out of the gate. That is a good thing, right? That has built-in value. And the points tend to value that 0. Whereas for some reason it tends to value monsters a lot. Right? Like monsters, especially non-hero monsters, are just traditionally highly overcosted, even though they are the lowest value piece. They start with negative currency at winning the game. Right?
Nobody played Tree Lords at 260 when they started. Very few would play them competitively. You didn't see Lori running Tree Lords at 200. You may not see even that many at 180 right now.
Right. Because if I was going to stack rank, right, the types of units and their innate value, all else being equal, it would go big blocks of troops, right?
Yep.
Single hero monsters, okay?
Yep.
Who especially who are defensive, because there are 2 scenarios where they are relevant, right? 2 battle plans where they're relevant. Okay.
Tom, this is just a long overdue Horde meta confession. I'm enjoying it. Let's keep going.
Sure. Sure.
I didn't say it. I didn't say it.
Elite units.
Sorry, that's a low blow.
Elite units, and then regular non-hero monsters. Right.
Right.
Like,
I mean, it's the reason
and
why
we have
I
those
would
completely
reluctantly
flipped.
Right.
Yeah.
It's in for value, for unit value. I agree completely. It's the reason why I'm reluctant to buy the Black Coach, right?
Yeah.
Because it's actually in the lowest tier of those units, and it was fairly highly costed for what it was doing. As a piece in general, it has to bring a ton of utility to actually be worth its points. But the reality is that like, and so my proposal to give it the hero keyword would bump it up 2 tiers into the second best tier.
Mm.
Because it can now gain items, it can now gain command traits, it can do those other things.
Yep. Also, 2+ tough for AOS president. He said, "My platform is cheap monsters and expensive hordes." Buddy, you've got my vote. We don't need a primary. You're going all the way to the Aesir house. I don't know. The Heish house. I don't know where
The
I don't know where
Heish
they
The Heish house. There you go.
There you go. So at any rate, like, I think that basic conception is still askew, right? In how we think about these kinds of points.
Yeah.
Because what I see all the time is these like hordes that get pointed at like less than 1 wound, or sorry, less than 10 points per 1 wound, and monsters that are rated at like 30 points for 1 wound. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, that is way off what actually matters in the game, right? It's a rare monster that can have the killing power to earn that back.
Yeah, you're right. Like that doesn't win games.
Right. Killing itself, is like a component of winning because it is an objective-based game. And like, also, by the way, second corollary to this is that defense is almost always more powerful than offense. Because being able to sit on a point and hold it.
Yeah.
No. Like, this is something I'm very, very on about. Being able to, the way you win the game is by sitting on a point and holding it. Right? That's the battle plans. Yep?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Hence, a unit that can sit, and some of them even have scaling rewards where the longer you sit, the more valuable the thing becomes. Hence, defense is better. Right? Now, you might say, well, but offense is how you pull a thing off of there. Sure.
Yeah,
and what happens
but
if somebody else...
my defensive's high enough.
Right. Then I don't get them off. This also then there's deeper rabbit holes we can go down here of like drops and being how mobility factors into this, and can you alpha bunker these points and stuff like that. That's blasey blah. I don't want to go into all that. But the point is that like defense in general will have a slightly higher value than offense. Okay.
Yeah.
Or it should.
It should.
It should be valued higher.
Correct. Because it also like the other side of that coin is an offensive thing that can punch you off a point but then dies in return is now removed. And it's just a trade, right? A defensive thing that can grind a thing out and still remains is not trading.
No, it's just winning.
It exists, and the other thing doesn't. It has won, right?
Yep. If you can outgrind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's been the predominant pattern. Now we have had a somewhat change to that with Slaanesh and Feck this year, where the design nature of them has allowed them to punch hard enough in a lot of cases where you can do reasonably well with 5 of the big beasties, the Ben Johnson list, and of course we know how Slaanesh has worked, keepers and the chariots being 2 central pieces to their damage output, and then grinding people down with the summoning. But yeah, the predominant pattern over the last 4 years has been one variation of the Skaven change host pattern of the equivalent of durability through cheap bodies with range damage, or just the straight up Sequitors, Hearthguard, Witch Elves, etc.
Yeah. No, I agree. You look at something like Slaanesh, which generally didn't have any bodies, right? I mean, sometimes you summon 30 Daemonettes to try to body block someone off a point. But like, if I looked at your Slaanesh list and you had 30 Daemonettes off there, in it off the rip, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. That's a bad list. Like, it's just they had negative value, right? The reason that list was able to work is because, again, you could shut down their whole army and plow your ultra offensive units, right? Like, you were a glass cannon ramped to 11, and you could just sit there and plow multiples of these super glass cannons into them and just remove them before they ever fought, right?
Yeah.
Right. Because of Locust.
Right. So and like the so I think like we need to think about those things carefully. You look at somebody like Mortek, where they can be very defensive but also offensive. By the way, armies without any hammers, like hammers are still useful. You've got to be able to kill things generally.
Right.
Generally. Tom tested that certainly with his like Nurgle list, which basically did not a lot of damage, but would still win games just by like alpha bunkering people where they sat, alpha blocking them in their
Right.
starting zone, and then taking all the points and holding them and never being able to die.
Yeah.
And not only that, like things would die to me because of mortal wound kickback.
Yeah.
Sure.
Like it just couldn't grind my mortal through. Like it could not grind me fast enough to not kill itself. Because the more damage it did to me, the faster the more damage it took itself.
Mm-hmm. Well, and what's interesting about
And-
the meta
And
in
that
general,
list is back, by the
Sure,
way.
it's totally back. What's fascinating about the nature of that list is that the skew that's happened in the game itself over the past year or two has
Yep.
been that there is no armies that could reliably put high defense things on the table. Right?
Mm.
And so the highest offense people, Slaanesh and Doc and stuff like that, were overperforming
win.
because there was
Yep.
nobody who could actually match their level of offense with an equal level of defense, right?
Mm.
Which is
Right.
great. I actually prefer the game tilted towards offense quite a bit, right?
Mhm.
Like personal sense there.
I don't.
I understand that. But like it leads to boring games. Your way leads to boring games. And
I
like
like
maybe
winning.
it's not boring for you, but I would argue it's certainly boring for the vast majority of people.
Yeah,
Like a
that-
game where you fight and then for the whole game and basically you end the game state with all your models still on the table and nothing much has changed and you lost and you rolled a lot of dice and nothing happened. There are some people who enjoy that and kudos to them. You're one of them. Fine. But like I would argue for the vast majority of player experience, there's a lot more Timmies than there are whatever the hell that is.
Yeah, I think listening to the show over the past however many years since 2015, and that was one of the first statements that you put forward, Ben. So that's an unequivocal truth at this point, I think, for the vast
what?
majority of the player base.
Oh, that likes to remove models.
That offense is much more digestible than defense.
Sure. I mean, like we would have had a riot if they made a bunch of armies that were on the defensive level power of that, and that had been the dominant thing in the last 2 years. Everybody would have said the
Yeah.
game's boring
Yeah.
Yeah, because nothing dies.
because nothing dies. What happened? Well, we played for 5 rounds and 4 models died,
Right.
and whoever got on the points first won.
Yeah.
Yay!
Right. It would have been race to the bottom for drops and stuff like that. Yep.
Right. You know. So, I think that the meta is changing now because you're seeing higher defense armies become available, like Bone Daddies, you know, that kind of stuff. Like, by the way, S2D, who can also put very very high resilient defensive units out there.
Indeed. Yeah.
So it'll
We'll
be
cover that
interesting to
next
see how it
week
shapes
for
up.
those that are. Yeah.
Yes, we'll talk about S2D next week. We're gonna celebrate. It's gonna be Christmas with chaos next week. So I don't know, Tyler. What did I miss there? I mean, I know I went on like a lot of rant and talked a whole bunch there.
You did.
Yeah. So I don't feel like you necessarily came back to define the fat middle, to unpack the fat middle.
I mean, it's most of those armies end up in that 40 to 60% win rate. The closest thing we have to evaluate that right now is by his standards. But I think your question is not what is it, it's why. Why is that valuable, right? And that's really what you're trying to get at.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have an answer. What's your answer?
So the fat middle. Yeah, I love that term that's caught on. You've had a good year with terms. I mean, it's another way of expressing one of the ongoing constant discussion points, probably for any wargaming community. It's a fancier way in some ways of talking about approximate balance across an ecosystem. And that I have a very well-known bias to play armies to play lists that are a little more reflective of 3-2 pushing for 4-1 than trying to go for the 5-out. That's just personal bias, and respect whatever play style preferences anybody has. It's all cool. but in terms of for an overall ecosystem, that's much healthier. Yeah, when you have the vast majority of outcomes, yeah, are reflected in that space. And I don't, as you said, the best that we have right now, at least through this lens, is LLV's data. 40 to 60% is pretty wide. That's actually wider than I had been thinking about it. I've been more around like a 46 to 54%,
I think that's too
45.
tight.
But that might just be, yeah, give it particularly in the context of that.
I think like
data set.
like the professional esports stuff use a 45 to 55 rating.
Okay, interesting. But yeah, 40 to 60, that doesn't feel too bad.
Here's the value to me. Why do we care? That's the
Yeah.
That's the question, right? Why?
Yeah.
Yep.
Who cares? And I think Alex just said a good thing, which is when the win percentage is in that space, players believe that there's always a chance, and it comes down to the dice and the player's skill rather than the inherent army strength. Perfect
Absolutely.
summation. It minimizes feel bads, right? Where you feel like, well, there was nothing I could have done. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the more feel bads that happen, the more players leave the game. Like, that's just how that works. Get your teeth kicked in long enough, players will leave. Not every
Right.
player. Some people don't mind getting their teeth kicked in. Some people have fun even on a lose. I'm talking in the aggregate.
Yeah.
Right? People,
There's another effect.
You're always going to bleed players, but you want to minimize the bleed, right? And having people have frequent bad play experiences is not a great way to minimize the bleed, right?
Yeah, I've always thought like Gristlegore and etc. was more of an issue for casual players,
Of course.
competitive players.
Petrifex and Mortec are a great example of something that's terrible for the casual.
Yeah.
Competitive players will figure out how to crack that nut, right? And will know how to
Right.
play around it. Casual players will swing right into that 40 block of Mortec and get obliterated.
Yep.
Right.
True.
Yeah.
There is another benefit to the fat metal as we're talking about it.
Sure.
That and it's not just this like perception of hope or this perception of equality. There's also it prevents the poisoning of the well. Okay. Because what happens is that when you get a skew, right? Something that is going to skew heavy one direction and is going to have a 70 to an 80% win ratio. What happens is that the meta has to respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so the well gets poisoned. Because what happens is that lists, if they're not that,
They're anti that.
They're anti that.
Right.
This was the affinity cycle in Magic the Gathering when affinity came out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This is the affinity cycle. So it's the poisoning of the well. And so what it does is it has nothing to do with the viability of those other things.
Right.
It's the presence of the one bad apple ruins the entire data set.
Right. Yep. It puts artificial constraints on everybody else's build / play experience / fun / whatever, however you want to think about it, right? Because if you're not answering that thing, you're losing, right?
So like an example of this is like when I was building Fire Slayer lists earlier this year, right? Like this summer when I was looking at doing AshConf with my Fire Slayers, because of the presence of Rat Trap, I had to run the Banner of the World Dragon, like the 4+ immunity to spells.
Yeah.
I did not have a choice. Because of that reality was so heavy in the meta, there was no option but to run the banner.
Sure. I'll
But
say for the
now-
most part, I think now we've avoided most of that poisoning. Like again,
I agree.
Because I
agree.
think right now the game is largely in that space. There's like
But Slaanesh was doing that.
I don't disagree. I'm just saying that like I think this FAQ will solve that. And Slaanesh was already trending down, by the way.
Yeah.
And I think it will continue to probably trend down and settle somewhere reasonable. You know, like
I agree with that.
there's a couple still outside the sort of range of where we'd want them, right?
OBR.
Like Bone Daddies are probably a bit too high. That we'll have to time will tell. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Yep.
But my strong belief is they'll probably trend up a bit too high and need to be adjusted. Things like Beast of Chaos are trending too low. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So there's still room to push, but a lot of stuff is in that middle ground now. Like we're in a good place, trending better,
Right.
which is good. Like that's an excellent place, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. The 40 to 60, it kind of definitely reorients how I've been thinking about this. I'm trying to figure out why that feels almost too broad of a brush to be painting with regard to an ideal. So tell me.
Well, here's
more.
my argument.
Yeah.
I'll say it this way.
Yeah.
Stormcaster at 43, right?
Yeah.
Is that your experience with them?
No. Yeah, we talked about this earlier today. Not even remotely.
Okay.
They have some clear and very evident issues, but there's a huge but.
The reason I'm saying that is because given the stats we currently have and the source that like where we can pull them from, right? And we know that there's some cloudiness in that data. That's not a judgment on LLV or on anything like that. Please don't read me as saying that. I have nothing but the utmost respect for that man's tireless work at getting us the most awesome data set. I'm just saying that there are invisibilities in there you can't regress for, right?
Right.
That like drawing the fatter middle at 40 to 60 is the right place to cut it, reflective of what we can expect to actually have happen. And by the way, when you chop off like Slaanesh, assume you can like handle assume that we can whatever happens, something happens with the Bone Daddies, right? And they don't become a sort of new person at that rate. The less of those top breakers you have, the more the people in the 40s start trending up just a couple percentages.
Yeah, totally.
Right? Because they stop auto losing to the current bad boy on the block.
Yeah.
Right? Because the 50-60, the 55 to 60 people will have a shot against the, you know, like the meta breaker.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yep.
But the 40s people just basically will get their teeth kicked in.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I there've been a number of examples like this over the years. I tend to think Corn has at times been an example of this, where you look at least when the LLV stats existed, win rate for Corn, it was a little deceptive with regard to generalship and what you could actually get done with that faction. Yeah, there are a number of examples like that over the years. So yeah, that helps a lot.
Yeah, and I want to highlight something that Alex is saying here, and he says, well, you know, how do we factor in the things that pull hobbyists and Oldhammer? You know, and the element that I would add to that would be the like newer players. Like I know that sounds really funny, but like newer players are going to play the game more badly on average. They just are, because they don't have the experience.
Sure.
They don't have, and if there are some armies that are just entry-level armies that are going to pull people into them, either because people like default to having those models and so they throw them on the table, or that like they're Stormcast or they're an easy starter army, those values are going to trend lower. They just are.
Yeah.
Sure. And you can adjust for some of that. Like, again, LLV does regress for some of this. Like, he's very good at looking at things like being able to filter out mirror matches. He looks at things like one of the things he mentioned today that I think is a great piece of regression was he was looking at the performance of the Bone Daddies against other armies that were high performing, played by skilled players who had lots of 5-0s.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a great piece of regression. And you can see that they're overperforming within that cohort. Does that make sense? So, because you can filter for like more experienced players by looking at players who have a list of, who have a higher number of 5-0s in their record, right, with a particular force. And so then he can find the subset of matches where they're playing Bone Daddies, and if the Bone Daddies are tending to win more in those matches, then they're if they're still killing it at 70% nearly in those matches, they're overperforming.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's a great piece of statistical regression. Because that does eliminate things like the new player problem, where somebody doesn't know how to deal with like what the Bone Daddy's doing, and they just steamroll them, right?
Right.
Yep.
So you mentioned the idea that a lot of us just want to have that feeling of having a shot if we're not
We
necessarily
want to feel like
oriented.
it's not just like this weird
Yeah,
amorphous thing. There's a
yeah,
You want to
real
have a game.
tangible value to it. We want to feel like our skill.
yes,
A good game is where our skill decides some percentage of the outcome that is tangible. It's never going to be 100 because this is still a dice game and there's still going to be intangibles. But we
yeah,
feel like that's a determinative factor.
right. So I haven't played nearly as many games. People like Sean and Jake. They would
Right.
be much more interesting. But played a lot of tournaments over the last 4 years, and that's been my just overwhelming experience. Um, very like I don't know, 9 out of 10 games played are reflective of this. Where even if you're going up against a quote unquote better list on paper, the overwhelming majority of matchups tend to come down to your choices, player skill, generalship. Sometimes, dice actually can be a variable if things are really going wrong, skewing on both ends. But yeah, in my experience, at least, it does have an enormous impact on outcomes in this game. Now, you can run into those true rock paper scissors where you get outdropped by fire slayers on duality of death, and good game. Because you have a list that just can't do anything about, say, 2 bricks of Hearthguard sitting on the objectives with however many Volkite Berserkers
Sure.
that have tunneled and pinned you in your deployment. Things like that will happen, but I've found it to be where those true rock crushes scissors to be very rare. So that's all. This is that a fair I mean, what do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's so there was a Jared in the comments just said where the best general should take the day. And my answer to that would be yes, where the best general tends to be the winner,
Yes.
right? Because
Yeah.
there will always be a bad matchup. You're in the wrong realm, rules turned against you, your dice were cold. Like that's,
Sure.
these
Yeah,
things will happen.
Vince, tell me about your experience with Archeon this last weekend.
Where Archeon in a single phase took like 6 mortal wounds from spells when he had the Tzeentch shrine on him. So he had a 4+ shrug to ignore the spell, and then a 4+ shrug to ignore the spell, and then a 5+ shrug to ignore the spell, which he
Yeah.
failed all of. Failed every one of them. Then he had a 4+ to ignore the mortal wounds, and then he had a 6+ to ignore the mortal wounds, and failed all of those.
Yeah. Everything's fine.
And
Yeah.
I was like, nope, this is fine. And then he eats like 6 mortal wounds to the face, right?
Right.
And I'm just like, yep, great. I took, he got shot by laser beams out of a Luminarch and a Huracanum. And it was,
Checks out.
it was something like out of all of the mortal wound shooting that I got hit with, it amounted to, I don't know, I want to say it was like, he rolled really hot. I want to say it was 11 mortal wounds. That sounds about right. Something in that range. And I saved 2 of them on 4-up, 6-up. That's going to happen, right? Like that's not the expected statistical norm, right? But sometimes that's what's going to happen. Cool.
Yep.
So one of my friends he's sort of a combination of Johnny and Spike. He likes to play unique things,
The worst.
but he also is interested
The
in trying to go.
worst.
Yeah.
My mortal
Hey.
enemy.
Hey.
Yes,
Shut your
Tom,
mouth.
that's your psychographic profile. I know.
Yeah.
It is.
So
I
he-
am a combo Johnny Spike.
So he likes to, yeah, sometimes he feels like he's a Jekyll and Hyde personality. So the story that he's at least telling himself is that he wants to have the feeling of being able to compete on top tables. And
But he wants something unique and snowflakey and different.
exactly the best of both worlds. And
I get
So
that. I play dwarves.
right. So let's take we were talking about Daughters of Cain earlier. Now
Yeah.
they've had a very high win rate
Yep.
for a long time now.
Yep.
Looks like they're 60% right now, so maybe at the upper
Yep.
echelon of that fat middle. Let's say if you're a doc player and you think that going into 2020, your reality is going to change greatly, and that you're going to be faced more with more durability and more of a hard counter out there than what doc can respond to. That doc has more built-in potentially limitations than some other books to adapt to a meta. this is not very well expressed, but what I'm getting at here is I hear all the time a lot of people talk about sort of this notion of rock, paper, scissors, and that some armies don't have the capacity to adapt. So how do you guys think about this notion of rock, paper, scissors in a healthy ecosystem? And like, what is the weighting on that? Like, how much of it is just a necessary reality?
Some of it
the
is a
nature
necessary reality. Even
Yeah.
in, so take something like the easy analog here is magic. And
Because just to make it explicit, sorry, Vince, that like I hear often this notion of sort of the concept of rock, paper, scissors, aka this sucks. Like it
Sure.
runs counter to the idea of having a fair shot. Like
yes, because
I'm just going to run up against a lot of Nurgle slaves of darkness and OBR, and that's going to counter what I have been running, what I would like to run. Therefore, and I don't have the money or the time to go out and buy another army or paint another army. Therefore, why should I even care? Why should I even try?
okay, so let me see if I can unpack it.
Yeah.
Real quick. I'll be fast. The answer is to do basically what Magic aims for. Is when this gets right. I don't know if saying Magic always hits it, but I think it's what they aim for. So in Magic, you have like control, and you have like like fast burn, slide type of damage, and various things, mid range, and all this type of stuff, right? And these match very well to the types of these are the rocks and papers and scissors of that, right? Like burn, fast burn, speed burn will tend to kill like control if it can get out ahead of it and bring it down fast enough. Control will tend to outstop mid range or whatever, and mid range will tend to beat burner. I don't know if I all have that right off my memory, but that's the kind of idea, right? Okay. So, and
there are
what
play
ends up
styles that counter other play styles
that are stronger against it, and that's the trick. It's okay when it's just a tilt in your favor. It's bad when it is rock, paper, scissors. When it is that game you're describing, rock always beats, scissors, right? It always smashes them. There's not like good scissors. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like it is a 1-to-1. If you're in that true scenario, the problem is people use it to that term to
almost like unequivocally or
correct. If you're in the situation where that is truly the thing, where when you set down and you set up, their list is such a hard stop to you that you're scissors and they truly are rock, and you have the scissors has a 0% chance to beat rock when it's
that is a bad play experience,
right? If we get to that point, then that's bad. Okay?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Is like, at least in my limited experience over the last 4 years of a lot of tournaments and hundreds and hundreds of games, the vast majority of the time that never happens.
I agree completely.
It very rarely happens.
Very, very rarely, and trending much downward, by the way.
Yeah.
Right? Because now, but you're always going to have some soft element of it, right? Like there'll be times when control is kind of in ascendancy in Magic based on like the card pool that's available, and so that makes mid-range or whatever it is naturally kind of weaker. Good mid-range decks can still win. They're just kind of starting off knowing that they're going a little bit against the tide, right? And I think that can be the same thing. As long as we have that softly, like, oh, there's a lot of, there's a lot of offense in the meta right now, like where things are really powerful. So like mid-range, moderate armor blob control isn't a good counter. Right? Because the offensive units will just plow through them and peel your whole unit, and you'll have nothing to say about it. Yeah? Does that make sense? Because, like, that's probably a strat. Like, flood the board with 4 and 5 up dudes is probably a strat, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of the meat strategy, right?
Right.
Fill the board with meat and see if you can win it. Like, if offense is in ascendancy, you're on the back foot. If defense is in ascendancy, you're on the front foot because they're going to be hard pressed to stop you. You know what I mean? You're going to hit them with so much meat that what you going to do with all that meat? What are you going to do with it?
Right.
You don't have enough to remove it. Can't cook all that meat. Right? So my point is, like, as long as it's just I don't know how you define that percentage, but my argument would be if the fat middle is holding true in outcomes, then we're in the right place. Vis-a-vis that rock, paper, scissors. Because if it's not, what you're going to see happen is those skew farther apart. as certain armies who can only generate certain strats just lose outright, and certain armies who are in the ascendancy strat just win outright.
Right.
Right.
So
the fat metal is an emergent property of that not happening to a strong degree.
yeah, that makes sense. Tom, do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I agree with that.
One of the frequent discussions is this notion of a sideboard and or two list formats, and I think we're all generally a fan of
two list
format. Love it.
But
the best format.
So I wanted to hear your guys' views on why you think it's such a good format, particularly from an ecosystem standpoint, a healthy fat middle ecosystem standpoint. If in fact it is, I've also heard arguments that it runs counter, that it can increase, that it can lead to the wrong incentives. Now, I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the case for the majority of your tournament players. Like, if we look at the NashCon player base, there's a lot of people there who are, say, semi-competitive. Like, yeah, you know, we want to have a shot, but we're not necessarily there. We're not going to win the tournament. We're going there to drink beer, have a good time with our friends. It's yada yada yada.
By the way, that's most tournaments.
That's most tournaments, right?
Even Adepticon.
90% of the people there are just there to have a good time, hang out with friends, enjoy the con, and roll dice.
And there's 20 people that are actually competing for the podium. Of the 200. Right.
But I certainly have heard this argument from a number of people that those kinds of formats, sideboard, two-list format, can incentivize greater skew. That is, it can increase the number of games that are happening where there's a harder skew, aka more bad play experiences, more of these, what we've been calling aberrations, rock smashing scissors.
Yeah.
There is no way.
I agree. Like, in my opinion, like, the person with two skews loses to the person who has, like, two balanced lists ready to answer the skews in the meta.
Right. And so, like, the problem is this. So we talked about, like, the poisoning the well, right? And the reality is that what happens is that if you have a skew, what it does is that if it's so strong that everything else begins to have to adapt, right?
Yeah.
When you have a two-list format, what that allows you to do is to build that silver bullet for that skew. So you have a silver bullet that is a hard answer to that skew, and then you build a generalist list. And so what happens is you play that generalist list, and you can take most all-comers until you hit that skew, and then you just knock it out of the water. And so what it allows you to do is actually customize what you're bringing to deal with outliers.
Yeah.
To deal with things you can't normally deal with by building weird skew lists.
I mean, there's also going to be some variance in factions due to, well, one main variable probably is available model range, and the worst, model range and rules with those models that, Daughters of Cain, a lot of people would say, have less adaptability to counter certain skews.
It's true. So what's going to happen is that in that meta environment, it will favor armies like Slaves to Darkness, Cities, Stormcast. It'll favor any of those armies that can have basically what we call transformational sideboards. And so would be like secondary lists that can completely flip your play style on its head, or go in directions that you don't normally do. Like, so an example of this would be, like, even Fire Slayers have this. Fire Slayers have, like, a heavy bodies, like, rock hard list, and, like, there's some really good, like, shooting Fire Slayers lists out there. Like, the one list that I was looking, like, when I was building for NashCon last year, I was building a Hearthguard Berserker, like, Death Star list, which is the standard one.
Yeah.
And I had a super heavy shooting skew Fire Slayer list.
Yeah.
So to deal with the things like Slaanesh that needed to be dealt with before I got into melee. And he started farming depravity off of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my answer would be ultimately I like the two list better than the sideboard because sideboarding is just really kind of a hard thing to do. Things don't swap one for one like Magic cards, you know.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Whereas the two list also locks you in, and you get to play that fun blind man's bluff at the beginning. It just and even armies like Ironjaws with the most limited unit selection in the game can play very different armies on two lists, right? As what's his name showed. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I don't remember his name. Crap, what was his name? The person who did really well with Ironjaws at NashCon. Gosh darn it.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh my god. Oh, he's gonna kill us.
I know, and I'm
Oh,
so
he's
sorry.
gonna kill us.
I'm
Oh
You're
sorry.
not
my
talking about
God.
Kale, right?
No, it's not. No, it wasn't Kale. No,
Oh wait,
not,
he
Yeah, I
doesn't
just
play
need
now.
to
it's not
feel.
Scooter, which is who plays IG all the time. No, it's Bryce's buddy is how I think of him. But
Oh
no,
my god, he's gonna murder us.
we're gonna be murdered for not remembering him. I'm sorry in advance. Your army was great. You did a great job. Anyway, too many things and too long of talking. At any rate, yeah. So like the last thing I want to talk about here. I mean, we could go for hours and hours on this, but I don't want to bore everyone to death. But here's one of the last things I wanted to talk about. We can hit a couple other issues if you guys have got some stuff.
Did we cover the multi-list format, Tyler, and why it answers this, or did you want more discussion around that?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
I think we
Okay.
got it. All right, I want to talk lenticular design real quick. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Here's lenticular design. Lenticular design is this concept that Mark Rosewater came up with, and it's an idea around complexity. So here's the basic concept. You can take a single, in his example, it was a magic card, but in our example, it could be a war scroll. And you can say, how complex is this? And the answer you will get back will be varied. That's not surprising, right?
Right.
And one of the ways that could be varied is because a new player might look at a war scroll, like let's say the old plague monks, okay,
Right.
or whatever. You can pick whatever you like.
Yep.
Let's pick new Archeon. That seems fair.
Sure.
He's a brand new
Sure.
scroll. A new player is going to look at like Archeon and say that is a very complex war scroll, right?
Yeah, it has like 10 entries.
Has like 10 things on it. An experienced player might look at that and go, yeah, that's not bad, right? Because they can internalize that data more easily. Yeah.
It's too limited.
Yeah.
He can't do enough.
Okay. Well, they can just look at it and say like, yeah, that's not that they're rating the quality. They're just
Sure.
saying like it's not complex by the standards of the information I can handle because I have internalized a huge amount of game terms and everything else.
Sure.
That's all second nature to me as an experienced player, right? So I understand what all this means and can unpack it quickly. All right. That's not surprising. Okay.
Right. Right.
The surprising thing was when the opposite would happen. Okay.
Okay.
When you show, in his example, it was a card to somebody, and the new player or the less experienced player thinks it's simple,
Yeah.
and the more experienced player thinks it's complex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because they see all the interactions.
Because they see all the interactions. Exactly. Yes. So this
Right.
can happen often with Johnny type cards in Magic. One with nothing is the classic example, like pay basically a very small amount of black mana, and the effect of the card is discard your hand. That's it. It's 3 words.
Sounds great.
Right?
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
why would anybody, a less experienced player is going to look at that and go, this card's simple and stupid. Right? Whereas an experienced player looks at that and realizes the various combos and things that can happen. Okay.
So wait, I can put this in my graveyard, and yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can just dump my whole hand on my graveyard and then use it for recycling effects and blah, 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 blah. Okay.
Ty, if you're listening, your name finally came to me. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Is
yeah,
that who you're
Ty.
talking
We
about?
are.
Ty's
Yeah.
been playing Stormcast, right? He hasn't
Word.
been playing.
He had
Ironjaws?
Ironjaws at
Legions of Nagash.
Oh, I didn't see it at NashCon.
Yeah,
So.
we're assholes, buddy.
I didn't
We
realize
love
you're
you.
talking about Ty.
Sorry, Ty.
Sorry, bud.
All right.
Hey, bud.
At any rate, what's interesting to me when this discussion comes up in Warhammer is I don't think it happens much on the scrolls because it's actually pretty rare scrolls that have like that kind of hidden level Johnny-esque complexity to
Right.
them.
It's
Right?
almost always battalions.
Yes. Where it comes up in here is in the synergy and in the the cross nature of the thing.
The
right?
weave.
Exactly. Where a newer player will look at like Marauders and go, Marauders are very simple and probably not very good. They seem overcosted for what they are. Right? Whereas an experienced player will look at Marauders and go, wow, actually I have a pretty complex set of decisions to make around all the different potential buff pieces I could throw at them and synergize with them, and what's the right army I can build that utilizes that without me wanting to also use those buff pieces on something else. Right? They understand that there's like a high amount of actual complexity in the decisions there. Because you can't just say, like, one of the mistakes a lot of people make, and I see in their list building, is they overcompensate synergy. Right?
Yes. They overvalue synergy.
Well, they think this unit's really good when it has these 6 buffs on it, and this unit's really good when it has these 6 buffs on it, and this unit's really good when it has these 6 buffs on it. And I can generate all 6 of those buffs.
Yeah.
But you can't do it to all 3 units.
Right. And so what ends up happening is they build this army, and then when they get on the table, they realize that they can't actually, like, one unit is good. The rest of your units that are actually fighting the rest of the battle are bad.
Trash. Right? Yeah, exactly. And thank you, Chris Steele in the comments said Furies from S2D are a great example.
Furies,
of that.
baby.
Yes,
we were talking about them
agree
earlier today.
Completely. Oh my God, Chris, thank you. That's such a good example of it. Like, Furies are one of those things that somebody newer might look at and go, that's simple and dumb and bad, right? Like, it's a unit that, like, what do they even cost? I'm trying to think. They
100.
cost 100 points for 6 of them.
Yeah.
Right? And you look at them and you're like, okay, that they can fly, I guess. Their attacks are, like, meh-ish at best. But, of course, that sneaky little devil's ability where you can pick this unit to fight, you can say it will cower instead of fighting. If you do so, this unit must make a normal move and must retreat. You realize, like, wow, that is like,
Tactically
so
rich.
ungodly, tactically rich and powerful, right? In the bad decisions it puts your opponent into.
The more mobile skinks.
Yes.
12-inch.
That
flying
fly.
skinks that can retreat back over the other thing you're trying to screen out. That then opens the charge.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you charge them forward, get into combat, and then
leave.
retreat out, and then leave over top of them
into an objective.
Into an objective, or totally. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's why playing Stormcast this year, Ether Wings have become one of my favorite units in the entire book.
Yeah, I mean,
they have extraordinary, somewhat hidden utility. As you're just saying, utility you need to unpack to go through playing them.
They're an excellent example of that sort of hidden lenticular design where, like, the actual newer players won't, or less experienced players, I don't want to just say new people, but, like, people who less experienced won't see the hidden value, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So thank you, Chris, very much. No, I love Furies. It is a great example. My only sad part about Furies is that you can't mark them. That's truly what makes me sad. I wish they could be marked. Furies used to be able to have a mark, and I just wish they still could.
I think that, as an aside, we'll talk about this next week. I think Cultists and Furies, like all of that stuff from Warcry, not only lacking a mark but also lacking Undivided, was a huge missed opportunity.
Sure, but we'll cover that next week.
Yeah.
Yes. Bartek said things that have a 6-inch pregame move. Yeah. Agreed.
Oh,
yeah.
Or like the Despoiler's ability to move a bunch of units 5 inches.
Or like all of the Despoilers, any unit in Despoilers, D3 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I think it's a fascinating element of, I like that kind of stuff, and it can be hidden. I think that's a cool thing that I don't think people often think about, and I love that existing in the game. I'm actually happy to see them exploring stuff like that a little bit on stuff like Furies, and I'll be interested to see what they do with, like, Thunderers and KO. That's probably another good example, right?
Yep.
So just I think there's rich space there. I wouldn't want it ever to become. You got to be careful with it though, because that's the other point of lenticular design that kind of Mark talks about. That if it gets too heavy, it ends up being a big problem because
it becomes its own game.
Yes, and that functionality is a natural barrier of entry to newer players that will catch them out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So it's
And that's
fun.
not a good play experience when they get caught out and lose games because of it.
Right. It's fun, and you want some of it. You want a little bit so that experienced players can have that joy of discovery. But
Yep.
boy, is it on a razor's edge, right? Because if
Yep.
you go too far, then it suddenly becomes this sort of nightmare scenario for new people, right?
And this is what I was kind of talking about. I mean, this is the language that would describe the Black Coach. Remember when I was talking about it earlier at the beginning of the show? I was talking about how like it brings utility that nothing else in the army has. And what I was articulating in that was I was talking about it. There's lenticular design and how it has been created with the abilities that it has functionality that no other unit in that army has.
Yep.
Glaive Race Stalkers, by the way, also in that space, interestingly enough. And when was the last time you saw a unit of those on the table?
The last time I played Night Haunt, like 2 weeks ago.
I don't even know how to respond to that, but continue.
And they all died horribly. At any rate, Ogres had something to say.
As
about
they
that.
should.
Sure. Anything else you want to touch on? Like my summation would be I think we're in a good place, trending better, most in the fat middle, good design. I think there's some interesting elements we can continue to explore here. And I'd love to see like development formalized as a role within the sort of shop.
Yeah.
And you're differentiating from your understanding of the current role of playtesters, that you think there's still
correct. Oh, playtesters need to exist. Oh,
sure,
yes.
absolutely.
They are your stress testers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like the difference would be, and Vince talked about this, like when we would design stuff, Vince would just go hog wild and just make things.
Go ham on
and
it.
then he would just go ham on it, and then he would turn it over to me, and I had documented every single bonus in the game and the exact range. So I could look and see like the columns of abilities and see like what the range of bonusing is, and to see if like what he has added has broken it or broken the actual like the range compared to other comparable things.
Yeah.
And that's just one example of that type of testing. Another type of testing is like the Blue Ocean like building, where you like this is where Math Hammer sits. Like you need somebody that has a good sense of what things are capable of and can just go and just kind of like design lists in Blue Ocean format and really try to aim to break the system.
Sure, and I'll point out that like, one of the challenges is a lot of this stuff is hard to math. Some of the things we've talked about with some of these chambers have very squidgy, weird abilities that don't sit neatly in math, and that's where the challenges come up often, right?
Right. And you need people that can sit there and go, hey, do you know with this new ability you introduced, I can do X, Y, and not only that, but A, B, and C.
Right.
I'm not. Maybe I missed it, Tom. I'm not sure if you explained people may not be familiar with the Blue Ocean strategy or Blue Ocean concept.
Like you're out in space that nobody else is exploring.
Yeah.
Right. You're fishing in like so red waters are areas that are like heavily fished.
Yeah.
And Blue Ocean is you're out in areas that are untested, that are unproven, and exploring in those spaces. And so it's your Johnnies that will sit and design lists out in those spaces and find just broken ass shit out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like it was the alpha bunkering concept. Like the alpha bunkering concept back at ACON, that first Nurgle list that I designed, like that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
In Warhammer prior to that.
Right.
And then suddenly alpha bunkering, like the power was realized and it became a thing.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is that you need developers that are willing to explore spaces that no one else is in.
Mm-hmm.
And really like take what the designers have done and just run it through the mill and see what it generates. That's what I would say.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, we've been talking, I've been staring at LOV's latest, looking at these match win percentages, and when you look at it through that 60-40 lens, it certainly gives me an even stronger feeling that we're in the best place or headed toward the best place we've ever been.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, It's,
Yep.
OBR and Hedonites are the only two that are outside of
Yep.
that. Doc is right on the edge. Big Wa has been doing really well of late. But,
Yep.
this long list, other than Fire Slayers, which are a terrible army to play, and everybody knows that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Other than that, we can all
I
agree.
hate you guys.
This entire list is fantastic. Like, I would happily play all of LON, Idonath, Bones, happily, and it's like everything is in this range of 40 to 60.
Yeah. It's an embarrassment of riches in that area right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Seraphon are underrated. Seraphon have great variety even still. We're gonna get a good.
Well, and the reality is we will probably see something from them in the new year, right? Pretty
Yeah,
quick. So like,
Right.
absolutely.
and I have, that's such a rich range. It would be hard
Yeah,
to imagine
sure.
that not doing some good stuff. So
Sure.
it's and that's even if we don't get new models. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
in a world where they decide to get rid of some stuff and add some stuff, that's even better for them. But yeah, I agree. That's always the lens I've thought of it as. And I know that might seem kind of wide to people, but I agree. There's just too many other, with something Alex said earlier, with like given all these other variables, that's kind of how we have to look at it, right?
Mm.
And that doesn't mean, by the way, that we can't still continue to tweak stuff. Let me be Tom for a moment and be very clear about something. Like just because somebody's at like 41.2% doesn't mean we're like, okay, well, we're done. They're in the middle. Yay. Who cares? Stop working. That's not at all what we're saying, right? We're saying the game isn't off kilter. Everything's happening within tolerance. But that also means like what that then says we look at
Standard
these, like,
levels of deviation.
half yearly things is we go, who's at 41? Okay, let's focus some more attention on them. Where do we need to maybe tweak a little, right?
Yep.
And the people who are and they get a different sort of attention than the people who are at 59.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Agree with that
And you
completely.
just use that to kind of guide how you're thinking and kind of just slowly, you're always pushing. Things are always going to be trying to get wonky, but as long as it's in there, game's in a healthy place. And then we just, things push within normals, right?
Right. I definitely think that's an important point about the offense versus defense, which has been an ongoing point you guys have made in the show many times, and how overwhelmingly I think the 4-year span we've had so far supports that perspective.
There's a reason why I. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'm done. Go ahead.
I would say there's a reason why I choose defensive armies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if your pieces survive to do more things, you win.
Right.
It's that easy.
Right. And if the needle isn't tuned just right on defense, it just wins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely, still room for improvement in that area.
Agreed. So there you go. That's and I think like meta, predictions, what we're gonna see over the next couple. Let's end this now on a little bit of a hard meta prediction. Give me something about the meta you predict over the next 6 months between this FAQ and the next. Ring-a-ding-ding. We'll predict a thing. Here we go. Tom, what is your... It could be anything. You don't have to predict the whole meta. I'm just saying make a meta-based prediction over the next 6 months.
Shooting and anti-shooting is going to come back strong. Strong.
You just stole mine. Yeah, that's what.
And
what's the trigger for that?
Nurgle, Slaves to Darkness, on one hand, on one end of the spectrum, which will be strong anti-shooting.
Sure.
And I would also say I think that Fire Slayers have the potential to sit in this as well, as strong anti-shooting.
Sure.
And for strong, on the other end of the spectrum, you're going to have KO.
And arguably Zinch, I suppose, who's doing shooting through magic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And so, and like the most powerful tools in this matchup will be line of sight blocking things.
Okay.
So it won't be bonuses or it won't be penalties to hit, even though that'll be strong. It'll be line of sight blocking. And so, like in Nurgle Slaves Darkness, Despoilers, being able to shut off line of sight with terrain, will be really powerful. And with that, Fire Slayers, I say both their wall and they can ally in wizards that can take walls that block line of sight. And so they have the potential to shut off portions of the battlefield because of blocking line of sight.
Okay. Tyler?
Yeah, mine was going to be pretty similar, but definitely with the ongoing love of the trees would add that I definitely could see a world where their percentage rate goes up, given the nature of how that army works and the toolkit that they have. I think that that there was this somewhat initial consensus that that was a weak, quote unquote, weak book when it came out, and I bought into that a little bit too much initially as well. And the numbers are supporting it, and in the minds of a lot of people. But I think it is it's a faction that could have more tools than most to do reasonably well in this potential upcoming meta of more durability and more range damage, whether that's magic or shooting or some combination.
Nice. Cities will trend up as people unlock actually the best combos out of this incredibly complicated, rich depth book, the Hollow Heart. Oh, we didn't mention the Hollow Heart got its fix. Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, yeah. There was a number of those. Khorne, Reapers of Vengeance.
That was really just re-clarifying what was already there before, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Hollow Heart is now only the wounds actually suffered, which, yay, good, how it should have been fixed originally. Fine.
It's a fine fix.
It's a fine fix. I still think they will continue to trend up. And I think
Slaanesh... and no bridge fix.
We forgot about that.
The lack of a bridge fix, I think, will skew a number of shooting lists up.
Sure, which is good. And I think Slaanesh will trend down, coming to rest probably somewhere still in like I'm gonna say somewhere still in the low 50s. There you go. That's my argument.
I'd buy that.
Especially as like and I don't know how much KO or Tzeentch would affect that. They could knock it lower, but there you go. Cities trending up, Slaanesh trending down. There's my and I couldn't be happier.
And to be clear, I'm predicting meta density.
I get you.
What do you mean by that?
Like, I'm not necessarily to be clear, I'm not saying that those are going to be the king of the pile.
There'll be more of that stuff.
But the meta density is going to get really high on either shooting or anti-shooting. Like, they are going to have a poisoning the well effect that people are going to have to skew against. Because you have things like OBR's catapults.
Sure.
You have things like that are going to have this steady pressure to incentivize blocking line of sight. Or vice versa, removing key and strategic pieces.
Sure.
And so it's gonna push back and forth along those lines, I think.
So we'll see. I mean, we're on the edge of potentially two armies that could vastly shake up meta performance.
Yeah.
Because they're both very orthogonal to how everything else plays right now, right?
Yeah.
And so it'll be very interesting to see what the Birdman and the boat people bring to the table. Birds and boats. Oh, that should be the name of the box. Birds and boats. All right, folks. Well,
thank you guys for doing this show. It was really great.
It's a lot of fun.
It should be the flock of a feather, right? It's like flying and shooting.
No, that's a no.
Duck hunt.
Duck hunt. I think it should be called Untitled Goose Game. All right, so for all of you out there watching, we certainly appreciate it. Give it a like if you liked this. Subscribe, of course, as always. I should start saying that at the end. That's the thing you're supposed to do on YouTube. I've heard. Good lesson to learn almost 6 years into doing this.
Something about smashing some buttons.
Smash some buttons somewhere. All the buttons until the good thing happens. I don't know. But at any rate, no, seriously. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you to all of you who are watching. We very much appreciate it. As always, we'll see you next Wednesday.